I'd like to call to order this regular meeting of the Boulder Valley School District Board of Education for Tuesday, October 28th, 2025. Board members may attend and participate in board meetings remotely in accordance with BVSD policy, BMEA, and state law. Laura, can you please call the roll?
Chavez.
Here.
Medler. Niznik. Quinlan Awada.
Here.
Rajpal.
Here.
Sargent.
Here.
Unger.
Here.
Thank you.
I'd like to ask everybody to turn their attention to the screens for our land acknowledgement this evening.
The Boulder Valley School District resides and operates on land that is the ancestral homeland and unjustly and illegally taken territory of the Ute, Puebloan, Arapaho, Cheyenne, Apache, Navajo, and 48 other tribal nations historically tied to this land, who have called this land home since time immemorial. We acknowledge the atrocities committed here, including the painful history of genocide, forced assimilation, and efforts to alienate the indigenous inhabitants from their homeland, supported by the policies of the United States government. BVSD is aware of the many indigenous peoples, past and present, and their dignified nations and cultures, who care for this land with strength and resilience. BVSD recognizes the histories of the land in Colorado and the survival of many nations that carried their oral traditions into the present. It is BVSD's responsibility to educate ourselves, our community, and our students so that we can embrace the wisdom and knowledge of indigenous peoples and actively stand together to address injustices. In offering this land acknowledgement, we affirm and honor the history, wisdom, oral traditions, and resilience of indigenous people, and recognize the responsibility to care for and appreciate this land together.
I'd like to remind everyone that the mission of the Boulder Valley School District is to create challenging, meaningful, and engaging learning opportunities so that all children thrive and are prepared for successful, civically engaged lives. Thank you so much for joining us here this evening. We're glad to have you observe and participate in our meetings. At this time, is there a motion to approve tonight's agenda? Moved by Jason, seconded by Lalania. Laura, can you please call the roll?
Chavez.
Yes.
Quinlan Awada.
Yes.
Rajpal.
Yes.
Sargent.
Yes.
Unger.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Next, I'm incredibly excited to hand the meeting over to Dr. Anderson, who is going to introduce our student moment for this evening.
Thank you, Board President Rajpal, board members. A couple weeks ago, BVSD's first all-female flag football team's inaugural season came to an end. While, of course, the team had visions of making it all the way to the championship game, the prospect of a team, let alone a playoff berth, was unimaginable only 1 year ago. You see, BVSD opted against fielding a team initially when CHSA, the Colorado High School Activities Association, first sanctioned the sport in the 24-25 school year in order to assess the student interest and work through the funding and logistics. The plan was for the sport to be considered by the district's athletic review committee during the normal 2-year process. Student athletes are here tonight, would not take no for an answer. They're seniors and wanted to play this fall. So undaunted, they worked together to gather the names of girls across the district who wanted to play the sport. And with a surge of support, they succeeded, and the team was launched over the summer. Very, very exciting. This video captured by Monarch's TV program, KYOT, shows them at practice, and tonight we're excited to hear from the girls about their experience this inaugural year. Ladies, I'm so proud of all you've accomplished and for advocating for something that I think is a really just great thing, great opportunity for the students in BVSD. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to our flag football student athletes.
Hi, thank you for having us. My name is Avery Kennedy. I'm a senior at Monarch, and I got to be a wide receiver and a safety for the team.
Hello, my name is Elia Shin. I attend Monarch High School as a senior, and I was a rusher and a inside linebacker.
My name's Addie. I'm a senior at Centaurus, and I was a linebacker and rusher as well. We just want to thank Randy for giving us the opportunity to come out here. He came to our practice a few weeks ago and interviewed us and wrote an article about our team. It just kind of got the world out there that we were going to playoffs and how much this team really means to all of us, and just kind of the background and history of how we got this team going and what we did.
A lot of the girls in every single team had no idea what they were getting into in the beginning of the season. We got an email and we saw an Instagram post and we just went on the field and started playing and pulling flags. A lot of the girls had to drop their commitments that they've made, sports, activities, extracurriculars, everything, just so that they could be a part of a team that they had no clue what was happening. Some of us didn't even know where the line of scrimmage was, didn't know how to pull a flag, didn't know how to throw a ball. And our coaches love to bring that up. But our girls have made it a true risk to give up other accomplishments and teams and memories that they could have made to play in a team that they didn't even know how to participate in.
So growing up, I'd always loved football, and I'd watch it with my dad and brother, but I always kind of knew it wouldn't be a possibility to play because it's not really a girl sport. But it wasn't until last year when me and my friend Abby Aloof, who couldn't make it tonight, decided that we wanted to make that change. We had seen other schools such as Arvada West and other schools having really successful flag football teams, so we were like, why don't we bring that up? So we brought it up to our athletic director, Eric Gustafson, and we had, I think, 2 meetings with him before he was kind of like, yeah, it's most likely not going to happen. It runs on a 2-year system. If you don't get in within the 2 years, we were on an off year this year, so we couldn't get into the league. So he was like, maybe next year, like, we can start a club if you guys want. But we weren't going to take that for an answer, so we reached out to Mr. Waterman from the district, and he agreed to meet with us, and we met with a few parents. We created an interest list. We got names all the way down to 3rd graders because a big fear was that we wouldn't have enough player interest and enough to make it last. So we did all the steps and we had a lot of meetings, but it was still just constantly being told no. So then finally we took it to the Daily Camera and they decided to write an article about it. And then I think that kind of got the community more involved and more passionate about it. And I think that was a big part of the push that made it happen. So it was super cool to see that. And then we started stuff in the beginning of summer. We interviewed, and we decided to select Coach Colin Hart for us because he just came in. He had so much energy, so much passion. He came in, he had a 5-year plan of all the things he wants to accomplish, and we just decided that that was our best option, and I couldn't be any more proud to see how we took that initiative to get the team started.
Yeah, so we got, like we said earlier, to playoffs in our inaugural season. We got to bye the first round. We made it to the second round, which we lost, but it was insane that we even got to playoffs. Our record was 8-2 for the season, which is crazy thinking that we didn't even know that we would have a team, as of 7 months ago. We didn't think this would even be a thing. So we got to playoffs, and since we did actually so much in our inaugural season, we taught so many girls even how to play football, and now since we even brought the district completely together because it was a district team, so we had people from Monarch, Broomfield, we had people from, where else, Erie, Fairview, Boulder, all sorts of different places, and especially Monarch and Centaurus. Since those teams are, those schools are rivals, it was kind of a learning curve for the Monarch and Centaurus girls. It was a very real thing. We laugh at our rivalry all the time, but it actually is a real thing. And so we got to that team, and we got on the field the first time, at practice, and we were like, oh, Sco Yotes, but we didn't. We secretly were like Sco Dubs, but we honestly really had to persevere through either not knowing everybody on the team, not having the same schedules, not knowing the teachers, and we really persevered through that through our leadership skills through either DECA or FBLA or National Honor Society, by using our education also in our schools that were different than the other schools, and then we got to share relationships and build honestly a much tighter knit community than we would have usually. Which is really a thing that I think we cherish the most of our team was our chemistry with our coaches and our teammates. And since the NFL is launching their first actual flag league, I think the popularity in this sport is definitely going to go up, and I do think there's a really bright future for this. And I do really appreciate that we as seniors got to be a part of this inaugural season and that we got to actually really like be the building blocks for this community, for this one sport that we think is actually going to flourish a lot in the next few years. We have a lot of girls that are coming back from last year being underclassmen and all of that. They're going to be the rocks this year. And then we have a bunch of people like in middle school and elementary school that seem really interested and really do want to come and talk about this and do want to play. So anything else that you guys want to add?
Yes. This season truly wouldn't have been possible without our girls, but especially we want to give a big thank you to our coaches. Our coaches were absolutely amazing. I have learned myself so much. I have played sports ever since I was a little kid, and I haven't learned as much as I have from anyone other than these coaches. So truly, without these coaches that we've had this season, it wouldn't have been possible.
Yeah, thank you guys for letting us come to this little moment. Thank you. You guys have any questions, comments, concerns? Open to answering.
Where there's a will, there's a way. Thank you for being here and sharing your experience with us. I see Kitty has a question to kick us off.
So since you represent different schools, you're not using the mascot of any one school. Do you have a mascot and a team name?
Yes, we do. So this is a BVSD sport where all of the girls from BVSD schools, even some outside next year, will probably come, but this is a Monarch Coyote team sport.
Okay. And you already said how many the other schools involved, but I just wanted to say I loved seeing the video, and I loved seeing somebody wearing a T-shirt from my alma mater, University of Arizona.
It was me.
Bear down.
Bear down.
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We will now begin the work session portion of our meeting this evening. Tonight we have one work session topic, which is a review of the BVSD Be Well Action Plan. And I'll turn it over to Dr. Anderson for introductions.
Thank you, Board President Rajpal. Board members, we're excited to be here with you today with members of our team. I'll let Dr. De La Cruz introduce everybody in a moment. To focus on our Be Well plan, if you'll remember I think it was about a year ago, where we had this discussion of we should do some evaluations of how things are working when it comes to supporting the well-being and mental health of our students, making sure that we're doing the very best that we can and using our resources the most effectively. And so we partnered with Renee Crown. They're going to we'll summarize their findings today, and then we will also go through how it connects to our strategic plan, valued and included. And then what our action plan is moving forward. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. De La Cruz for introductions and to get into the presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Anderson. Good evening, President Rajpal, board members. We're really glad to be here tonight to talk about the Be Well Action Plan, and I'm joined by members of our Valued and Included Action Team, which is a staff task force focused on the Altogether for All Students Valued and Included Strategic Objective. So from my left to my right, we have Senan Nauer, Director of Student Support Services, who's focused on behavior discipline, bullying prevention, and restorative practices. Tammy Lawrence, Director of Student Support Services, focused on mental health and well-being, who oversees counselors and mental health advocates. Shannon Gamble, our MTSS Director, and Chris Brecht, the Director of Strategic Initiatives. I'll start by just refreshing our collective memories about the Be Well Research Practice Partnership, which is a collaboration between BVSD and the Renee Crown Wellness Institute at CU Boulder. By combining research and practice expertise, the partnership seeks to strengthen and expand a shared understanding of best practices for increasing the overall wellness of students and staff. I don't think we're there yet, but it's fine. While there are many research practice partnerships across the nation, this is the only one with this particular focus on wellness, mental health, and well-being with actionable evidence. So during the time that we have together, we'll be discussing a brief overview of the BVSD Valued and Included Initiative, a quick summary of, as well as a thorough summary of the findings and recommendations from the Be Well study, and the BVSD Action Plan with identified timelines. The aims of the Be Well study were to learn about our practices, our programs, our policies, and to gather and analyze the perspectives of those who are closest to students' daily lives through a mixed methods approach. And this culminated in a report with key findings and recommendations that identified both bright spots and opportunities. The school board has seen the Be Well report with the findings and recommendations, and we're going to show the intersecting points between those recommendations and our actions in BVSD tonight. Our valued and included team has been working pretty diligently on the action plan based on or founded in that report. And as I said, looking at where our work intersects with the recommendations. So the Be Well report actually names 5 key, those are 29 recommendations. As Chris will outline, we're going to talk about, well, what we've established is 10 proposed actions for year 1, 10 proposed actions that align with current priorities and or initiatives, and then another 9 that are proposed actions for future consideration. But for the purposes of today's conversation, we're prioritizing year 1 actions along with ongoing actions that are already underway. Before we go into the recommendations, I will very briefly reground us in the work within the valued and included ecosystem as it sets the stage for our discussion tonight. So as the board knows, the aim of this strategic objective is that all students feel valued and included, that schools engage in restorative practices, and that they apply consistently the recommended resolutions for disciplinary events. And you all know about the accompanying implementation plan. I know you're very familiar with that. It's also codified in our UIP. As you recall, the climate survey composite shows that, there we go. The climate survey composite shows that overall the climate survey results in restorative interventions are generally comparable across groups. Suspension rates vary a bit across groups, but are notably low in general. And this is data that the board has seen. The slide's not, there we go. And looking at trends over time, the climate survey results, again, are relatively stable across time and across groups. Suspension rates show a 3-year downward trend despite a 0.1% increase for some groups. And there is slightly more variability in restorative interventions, but still showing relative consistency. In summary, the climate survey responses were stable. Suspensions continue to trend downward over 3 years. Restorative interventions are holding steady. And as I mentioned, the review of this context is merely setting the stage for our action planning as we connect Be Well recommendations with our current and future work and our All Together for All Students strategic plan. So Chris is going to bridge this context to the action planning, and then the rest of the team will relay that additional content.
Good evening, board members. Thank you for having us. So the slide that you see here is actually a repeat slide from a previous work session that we had, where we were outlining opportunities for improvement as a result of the progress that had been made through our UIP and the targets that we were chasing. In addition to our ongoing success of restorative practices and building on that restorative practice, we also highlighted something that relates directly to what you're going to hear more about tonight, which is that we've established a district working group or district action team that primarily is looking at 2 pieces of data sets in order for us to identify next action steps. And those data sets are the MTSS implementation review, as well as the Be Well recommendations. And this board has expressed interest in ensuring that we identify the intersection between those 2 data points to identify and inform our next steps as a part of this overall initiative. So if you're more of a linear thinker, as I am, from a timeline perspective, last spring, we completed the Be Well Action Report. Our partners at Crown Institute completed that report. Our MTSS team also completed the MTSS implementation review. This fall, we officially established this valued and included action team. Tonight, we're going to talk about how those overlap and where you're going to see how the MTSS data as well as the Be Well recommendations intersect. But more specifically, it's going to be around MTSS-B, and Shannon Gamble is going to talk a little bit more about how we define that and why we're aligning it into that scope tonight. because in December, we're going to have a much deeper dive into the overall MTSS implementation review that you'll see for both academics and behavior. But for tonight's purposes, we're going to focus on where that intersection lies between MTSS as it relates to SEL and mental health. So with that, I will hand it off to our Director of MTSS, Shannon Gamble.
Thank you, Chris. Good evening. I'm going to start by just grounding us in some vocabulary to make sure that we all are thinking about the terminology in the same way, because MTSS can be full of different letters and terminology that can be a little bit confusing. So when we talk about MTSS, we're thinking about the 5 components that are in the state framework. The Comprehensive Screening and Assessment System, Family, School, and Community Partnerships, Team-Driven Shared Leadership, database problem-solving and decision-making, and our layered continuum of supports, which includes the evidence-based practices. So in previous conversations, this board has talked about MTSS largely in the context of academics, and so for tonight, as Chris said, we're really going to be focusing on an MTSS-B. And when we say that, what we're referring to is, we have a definition here, sorry. A comprehensive system of social, emotional, and behavioral supports to promote student wellness and improve engagement and learning. So with everything we hear tonight, that'll be the framing of the MTSS information that I'm about to share. So as Chris mentioned, we completed an evaluation review of MTSS implementation across our schools, and we met with each school to discuss where they were at with their implementation of MTSS. And we used a rubric from the, called the Fidelity of Implementation rubric from the American Institute for Research Center on MTSS. That's a mouthful. We took their tool as this kind of objective research-based third point, and we took our Colorado CO MTSS framework, and we made some adjustments to make sure that it aligned to the language and the framing that is used in this state. So that's all familiar for our schools. And so you can see here that there is a section for each of the 5 components of MTSS. And the rubric uses a 5-point scale with descriptions of practices that might score at a 1, a 3, or a 5, with the rating of 1 indicating that there's little or no implementation, 3 would be partial or inconsistent implementation, and a 5 would indicate complete and consistent implementation. There can be scores of a 2 or a 4 for anything that might fall in between those descriptors. So this is a response frequency table here that you see that has the scores from all 27 items that were in the evaluation. And what it shows is the number of schools scoring at each rating within the 1 to 5 point range for each item on the rubric. And the color coding here matches the 5 components of MTSS. So just think of this kind of like a heat map. So we don't need to look at the specific numbers yet, but just kind of where you see the darker colors is going to indicate that there's a higher concentration of schools scoring at that rating. So using this to guide our opportunities, the first I would like to share with you is within the component of data-based problem solving and decision making. And this is really about the standardized processes that schools use to solve problems and monitor improvements. So this item is really specific to the ways in which the schools are using student data to drive systems level decisions. So remembering that we're zoomed in really on the MTSS-B side of things, and we know that this might be a strength for us on the academic, in the academic side of MTSS, but we feel like there's a real opportunity here to improve the consistency across all schools when it comes to using data about the students' social, emotional, and behavioral needs. I can add that since we collected this data in the spring, we're excited to see that schools are already making some shifts here as they're using really great intention in their 90-day plans to use some of their data to set goals for improvement. The next piece here is around our comprehensive data screening and assessment system. Just one second. So when you think of the first opportunity, think about it in terms of the processes that schools are using once they have the data, the way that they're engaging in conversations to make decisions. The items here in this section are really about the tools that are being used in schools to gather the data. And we see that there's an opportunity to explore the use of assessments to make sure that we know exactly which students need support, in which area, and that the support we're providing is working for each student. We know that having these robust resources to assess needs and impact within MTSS-B will allow schools to make more informed decisions about individual students as well as their school-wide system implementation. And the third piece here falls under our layered continuum of supports. And this is where we think about our evidence-based resources and practices aligned to students' social, emotional, and behavioral needs at each of the 3 tiers of MTSS. So here we have an opportunity to consolidate resources and increase professional development around these evidence-based practices, making sure that we're putting our efforts behind the strategies that we know are the most effective. And we'd like to narrow our focus to support implementation with fidelity.
If we could pause there, if board members have any questions around the process, around the incredibly comprehensive job that Shannon and her team have done, developing this, not only selecting the rubric, but going through each and every school and going through really thorough processes to reflect where they are and where they need to go, which would be a first for BVSD. This movement from a system of schools to a school system we're seeing just evidence of that every time we have an opportunity to update you on how our implementation of our strategic plan is going. So would want to pause there for a second. I know that we've thrown a lot of kind of real technical information, so just if there's any questions before we move on to the next piece, if that's okay.
Jason.
Thanks very much for this. I have a question on I guess it's the third one. Increasing professional development of evidence-based practices. I don't have a good sense of like how much dedicated time teachers have in professional development for this specific work. Is there a number of days that are dedicated, or how does that look like over the course of a year?
Well, as we all know, we do not have an abundance of days for professional development with our teachers. However, we have there have been a variety of offerings in this realm that have either been opt-in. Some of those have been offered through BVSD, some through our partners at the Renee Crown Institute. And then, do you want to just talk a little bit about what your team has offered? I know that it's not all within the required realm, but the MTSS team has definitely offered a lot of learning.
Yep, so we have offered, as Dr. De La Cruz said, some asynchronous courses that teachers can engage in. There's a coach on my team that works really closely with a small caseload of schools to do embedded professional development and coaching with that caseload of schools in alignment with the goals in their 90-day plan. And I think it's important also to name the work that the Student Support Services does with their MHAs and the counselors and with our administrators, which is really aligned to these practices as well.
Yeah, we've been working diligently with our professional learning team. We have multiple different opportunities for supports around professional learning. We have provided them as opt-in. We also have in-person sessions. We've looked at a variety that some are 2 hours, some are 1 full day, some are 2 full days. They cover the gamut of everything that's needed to help support teachers in identifying areas of concerns for students, how they care for themselves, how they use resources within our district to help support students. And we have also really worked to get internal trainers established within BVSD, so we're not always going outside of BVSD. That also allows for that flexibility on our Wednesday mornings to really be embedded within the schools to help support our schools and the system work that they're doing.
It's the right question, right? And I would say that, the work that we've done up to this point in really establishing the systems and structures and responses, and whether it's establishing this value and included team, whether it's really focusing on restorative practices, setting the expectations. I really feel like, getting on the same page amongst all schools with a consistent implementation of MTSS-B. So we're diagnosing and intervening in ways that prevent kids from having to get to the place where maybe we have to use restorative practices or even, some type of discipline. And so, as I've seen our strategic initiatives go from where maybe some of these things are now to fully implemented and really part of our culture, most have started kind of where these are now, and then through either UIPs, 90-day plans, schools, doubling down on their focus is when you really get to the place where folks have built the systems and the culture inside their buildings where they're doing this with consistency. And so I think that we're on the right path. But this idea of using MTSS for students supporting their behavioral and social emotional needs, diagnosing that and thinking of that as tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 versus, here's an issue, let's solve it, I think is definitely, we're evolving in the ways that we're being able to address these problems at the school levels.
Jorge?
Thank you for sharing this and condensing all the information. It's a lot in there, right? And I'm looking at the numbers, and it looks like a normal distribution, right? A lot of people in the middle, a lot of schools in the middle, some high achievers and some ones who are maybe struggling. Are these really, I'm trying to figure out how to interpret the patterns, right? So is it that the degree to which the training has been achieved for some of these, like the ones that you just pointed out, is that the participation in terms of training by schools? Is it the degree to which they've implemented the programs? And are you seeing any kind of patterns or trends about certain types of schools or that are not doing as well, or are there barriers that are arising as you're kind of going through this?
I think the thing that is a little tricky about looking at this data table here is that the evaluation was looking comprehensively at all aspects of MTSS, academic and non-academic. And so that's what those scores reflect, is an overall implementation. And so where you might see a school scoring in that middle area as a 3, it might be that their academic systems are really strong, and they might have rated that alone as a 5, but maybe their social-emotional behavior side would be more of a 1. So you kind of say, well, then you're a 3, you're in the middle. And so I think when we have a chance to look more closely at the findings and the data, you'll see that when we look at that qualitative piece to really dive into what those individual scores mean is where we get some more of that information. We definitely saw patterns by level from elementary, middle to high, some pretty clear patterns, as I'm sure you can imagine. And we haven't yet been able to correlate some of that professional learning to implementation. I think those are some of our more long-term goals, is if you've engaged more in some of the learning efforts, do we see that playing out not only in the implementation ratings, but also in some of the student outcome data. So I'd say that's more of one of our long-term goals.
So before we transition into the recommended action steps from Renee Crown and the Be Well report, I think it's obvious based on the conversation how critical it was for us to be able to have a lay of the land, if you will, for where we are within the MTSS systems across all of our schools, in order for us to have really great conversations as an action team on what we can prioritize, what the lift might be, what those trends are, because as you can see, there is a lot of information that comes from this, and it speaks to how critical Shannon's role is as a part of that action team to helping guide us through that as well. So how did we actually go about the prioritization of it? So the board is aware of the Be Well report and the findings coming through 5 key areas there of student reports of mental well-being, awareness of available mental health supports, usage of wellness centers and other supports, our BVSD families' awareness of mental health resources, and finally the system supporting student mental health. So all the recommendations in that we looked at that as an action team We looked at where we saw the opportunities through the MTSS implementation data, and then we were able to prioritize those. And as Dr. De La Cruz mentioned at the beginning of the session, this is kind of a summary of how that breaks out, and then we'll walk you through each of those. So it became 10 proposed actions to address in year 1, 10 proposed actions that align with the current policies or projects that are in place, and then 9 that are going to be held for future consideration. Now, one thing that I'll note here is that when we say addressed in year 1, it means that we are going to address it, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to meet and complete those action steps within year 1. As you'll see, there's many action steps that may transition into multiple years.
And are we in year 1?
We are in year 1, yes.
All right.
Currently, year 1. All right, and so now I will hand it over to our Directors of Student Support Services, starting with Senda Nauer, to walk us through the recommendation and action items.
Thanks, Chris. Great to be here with everyone tonight, and I will kick us off with the first 3 recommendations. So this first recommendation from the Be Well report essentially suggests that we make sure that the programs and services that we have in place are aligned to what students need most, and then to engage our community partners for broader support as is possible. And so the first 2 action steps in the kind of pink color there, as indicated by year 1, are to be completed this year by that valued and included working group that you've learned about. Again, to make sure that our programs are supporting the mental health and well-being are aligned and not duplicated across our system, and that they're addressing the most pressing needs of our students at this time. And then beyond that, the 2 action steps at the bottom that are on the ongoing category, those recommendations are that we continue to review our policies to be sure they're reflective of our student needs, well-being needs, and that we continue to work with our community partners and forge new partnerships as well. Next slide, Chris. Or thank you, Dr. De La Cruz. All right, so this next slide references recommendation number 2, which calls us to be sure that we have an increase in awareness of the well-being related services that are in place for our middle schools and our high schools. And the first ongoing step in blue is to continue to track the mental health resources and programming that are in place. And additionally, the report suggests that we establish a student team to co-design and then distribute awareness materials. And so we will be utilizing the student leadership groups that we have in place already, such as the Student Cabinet, the Student Equity Council, and hopefully perhaps even the Renee Crown Institute's Be Well Student Advisory Group. Also, in this year 1, we will be increasing the awareness of our mental health resources with additional visuals, announcements, assemblies, and we'll be working with specific school leadership teams on that. And then finally, for this recommendation 2, we will be working with our accountability and evaluation team to revise our annual student climate survey to make sure that the information we're gathering and asking of students in that survey really reflect their understanding of the mental health resources and services available to them. And that's something we haven't really done much of before. Next slide. Recommendation 3 might look like there's not a lot on this slide, but this is a very important topic. Recommendation 3 addresses our wellness centers at our high schools and recommends that we consider expanding the program to include wellness centers at the middle school level. You'll note that the ongoing action steps related to this recommendation, of course, include our fiscal sustainability for the current wellness centers that we have in place. And obviously, we must do that before we can make decisions about expanding the program. And now I'll turn it over to my colleague Tammy for more.
Hello, everyone. Thanks, Senan. I will be talking about recommendation 4A, which outlines ongoing steps to help educators identify early signs of student mental health concerns. This will be ongoing work for the Value and Included team, and in collaboration with our professional learning team, we will focus on reviewing existing professional learning for mental health literacy and symptom recognition. This will ensure that what is being offered is equipping our staff to know how to recognize warning signs and symptoms in students. We will continue to offer compassion-focused training for our leaders and our educators. This will help educators respond with empathy and understanding when they notice a student is struggling. And finally, we will integrate these efforts into the district's mental health frameworks, ensuring that these trainings aren't one-off trainings, but are embedded into how we support staff and students long-term in BVSD. Next slide, please. Recommendation 4B, which focuses on actively sharing clear and accessible mental health resources and information with families. This recommendation is designed to ensure that families are not only informed, but feel empowered and supported when seeking help for their children's mental health needs. In year one, we have identified 3 key action steps. First, we will evaluate our current communication channels to ensure they are clear, responsive, and meeting the needs of our families. This step is crucial in identifying gaps and areas for improvement in how we currently share information. Next, we'll establish a clear referral pathway for our internal and external resources. This will help families navigate mental health resources more confidently and efficiently. Also in year one, we plan to work collaboratively with our communications team to co-design materials with support from our parents and guardians. This will ensure that what we create is truly accessible and relevant from a family's perspective. We will continue to measure progress using annual family survey data, specifically our school climate survey. This will be overseen by our accountability and evaluations team. These steps are designed not only to improve communication, but also to build stronger, more supportive partnerships with families around mental health. Next slide.
We just pause for a second there? I think this is tricky, right? Because it's one of those things where you're not looking for it till you really, really need it. Does that make sense? And so I do think that that's one of the challenges that we'll have to, how do you create communication channels, let folks know how to access something that they probably won't be looking for until they need it, and when they need it fast, right? So I just wanted to kind of highlight that as a challenge around a general awareness, but then when you need it, that we have a place where you know how to go and you can go from, looking to getting services pretty quickly.
And to follow up on that, I wonder if that's an opportunity, particularly in the parent component of the survey, to ask that question, like, is this a need of yours? And if so, how have you been receiving the communication or the tools? Like, were they easy to access? Versus, if I'm never looking for a tool or resources to support the mental health needs of my kiddo, I could just say no, and I could skew the data in that survey, those results. So it's asking those questions, and I appreciate both in the parent survey and the student survey the willingness to adjust what has been a very long-standing, non-budging tool for some time to really meet the needs that we see today with our students. So I appreciate staff's desire and willingness to do that. Other questions, board members, while we pause before we continue on? Great, thank you.
Okay. In recommendation 5, focuses on enhancing coordination between departments that support student mental health at both the district and school level. Our first action step is to continue to work with district leadership on providing contact-based support for students and prioritize sustainable funding for these positions. District leadership is responsible for this work, and it aligns directly with our annual budget review process. Secondly, we will be looking to expand the use of current data collections that aligns with what Shannon spoke about earlier in the presentation. Next, the Value and Included team will continue to work collaboratively with our professional learning team to enhance and design professional development opportunities that bring together our multidisciplinary teams. This collaboration directly supports our goal of fostering integrated, team-based approaches to students' mental health. And finally, we want to encourage and sustain communication and collaboration at the building level. Overall, recommendation 5A is about strengthening our systems of coordination, ensuring consistent support for mental health across all levels, and building a culture where students truly feel valued and included. I will now hand the presentation back to Dr. De La Cruz to close us out.
And invite questions. You can see that the team has been hard at work, diligently building an action plan that is rooted in not only the Be Well recommendations, but also in our strategic plan, Altogether for All Students, and the initiatives and actions that are underway and ongoing, and building new actions as well. And we always appreciate the perspective of the board, and we welcome any questions or additional information.
Just a couple other points before we turn it over for questions. You know, it was when we reached out to the Renee Crown Wellness Institute. You know, there was a board conversation where the question was posed. You know, is there anything that we're doing that's doing more harm than good? Do you all remember this? Like, that was one of the key questions. And so good news is, no, that's not what they found. That you know, this awareness piece, making folks more comfortable in being able to diagnose and help kids get what they need, you know, trying to expand on the things that are working. You know, I do think that there are certainly fiscal constraints, and so as we get towards the budget process, that means you have to make tough choices. Some things that we were doing, if we want to expand some of these things, we have to stop doing those things. So I do think that this, the Be Well action plan gives us some clarity. It gives our team direction on where to go, but I think the really good news is that we didn't find anything like, yeah, we were doing this thing, we thought it was helping kids, and man, it's actually been more detrimental than helpful. So I do know that's something that they looked at, and just wanted to point that out because I've just remembered that distinctively from our conversation, because I'd never thought about, oh my gosh, we could be doing something that we think's helping and it's not. So with that, sorry, Laura, I'll turn it back over to you or to you, Nicole, for if there's any other additional questions.
Board members, any additional questions or comments for the team? Jason?
Yeah, thanks for a great presentation. You know, it was noted in number 5 about the staff at the school level that's you know, kind of on the front lines here, the mental health advocates, counselors, social workers, and then, you know, I think as we're having this conversation, I think back to the meeting last week when we were talking about what our declining enrollment challenges and fiscal challenges mean, and how it means, you know, I know for my own, for 2 of my kids at Creekside, we have a counselor that's incredible that's now half-time, and, you know, I think about all these things kind of in the context of that, and how, you know, I don't know that I have a question, but it's hard to look at these recommendations and think that, you know, these people that are on the front lines doing this work, you know, we're putting 500 kids on their, you know, on their plate instead of 300 kids. And so I don't know where, again, I don't know my question here. It's more just I want us to keep in mind kind of the reality of what's happening at the schools. And so, you know, as we think about these recommendations, kind of where do these frontline staff and key people, how are they involved? How can we, you know, to Dr. Anderson's point about kind of tough conversations with the budget, you know, if we really want to implement these recommendations, we have to think about having the staff in place to be able to do that.
Kind of piggybacking on that a little bit, Jorge and I had the opportunity to be at Meadowlark last week. They talked a lot about some of these support services. Question that I have is around the 2 goals, both on the systems and then the tier 1 supports, piggybacking a little bit on what Jason said. Where are we with ensuring we're using consistent, evidence-based tier 1 tools and materials that teachers can use, not just counselors, to help meet some of these goals in the classroom and help support students? I know we're trying to get consistent, but I was just hoping you could provide an update on where we are with some of those instructional materials and tools.
Yes, we have spent the year, going back to Jason's comment, we sent out a document for our administrators and our counselors to really work on together, given that some of our schools are working with less FTE than they have in previous years, to really outline and define what the role of the school counselor looks like in their building. Along with those efforts, we took the curriculum that has been identified and really found which department holds what curriculum, because that's the other challenging piece. We have multiple departments that have different curriculum that they are using to support our schools, and we've outlined and identified those. We will be working really closely with our valued and included team to identify the best way to move forward and identify, is it one particular SEL curriculum that we're going to be able to push forward? Is it the school counselor that's delivering it? Is it our teachers that are delivering it? How do we incorporate all those efforts, knowing that on our academic side, we have a lot on teachers' plates as well. And so it's a really challenging, coordinated effort that we really are going to be undergoing in the next year. We have outlined what those curriculums are. The other challenging piece is we also, at the same time, learned that there's a lot of other curriculums that are being used by our schools. So it's about trying to figure out how we move forward in the most thoughtful way, given our FTE allocations, the needs on our academic side, and then what we need to do with our MTSSB work.
Not to mention, some folks are better at this than others. Some folks are more comfortable than others digging into things that are related to well-being and social emotional health, and can have a better intuition and can pick up on when things are happening. So yes, so to answer your question directly, Nicole, I think we're in the beginning stages. I think that there's pockets of excellence and pockets where we have a lot of work to do. Is that a fair statement? But you start at the systems level, you start with expectations, then you can focus on implementation training, and then at the end of the day, people can't be short-staffed to be able to do really deep work in this area. And so, Jason, to your point, as we think about our footprint of schools and a footprint of a lot of really small schools makes deep implementation of something like this impossible. It really does. Hence the conversation we had last week, and the plan that we'll be bringing forward in January.
Jorge.
10 recommendations in year one, 10 recommendations in year two. That's a lot to get lost in the shuffle. As you look at these, are there certain ones that are easier to implement or maybe take priority over others that should be happening sooner? First to mind is the issue of communication, right? Making things really accessible. And, do we have to weed through the website to find stuff? Where is it being, where do we get the information? How can we make that as easy as possible? And are there other places that you feel like we should be focusing and investing first and foremost as we figure some of this other stuff out?
Jorge, you're speaking my language. So yes, absolutely. I think you bring up communications. I think that's absolutely a priority for us because there is so much that's going on throughout the system right now. How we coordinate those efforts to ensure that we're focusing on the right things, I think is going to be it's a no-brainer in terms of a year one priority that we can take. I would say the first recommendation in with how we align programs, I think is also a priority for us as a team. I don't think that we can have an accurate scope until we can define our focus area within that. So we can be a mile wide and an inch deep in some areas, and that's not to say that things that are happening aren't adding benefit and they're not adding value. But sometimes when we are able to narrow our focus, we're able to expand the scope. So I think us being able to take on some of those challenging conversations to really understand what's working where is going to be a priority for us to be able to take those next steps. I would say that. And then communications runs through 3 of the recommendations from our partners at Crown Institute. So that's obviously a priority for us as well.
Looks like we have no further questions. Thank you so much for this thorough presentation, for connecting between the last presentation update we had on the Renee Crown information and what are our action steps for this year and the years ahead. So thank you for your work on this. Board members, we are going to take a little break to rearrange the boardroom before we reconvene. Welcome back to the meeting, everyone. Our next item on tonight's agenda is the superintendent's report. Dr. Anderson, good evening.
Thank you, Board President Rajpal, board members. Good evening, everyone. Board members, as you know, last week we held the BVSD is the Place to Be showcase. I'm proud to report it was a huge success. I want to thank all board members who were able to make it, everybody from our community who was able to come out. More than 1,800 people came to our showcase. And so I know we have declining enrollment, but we have not had a decline in attendance at the showcase. 2 years ago, we had about 700 students. Last year, about 1,000. So this is probably the biggest gain that we've had, and tons of interest. And it was such a great opportunity for people, parents, community members, folks who are interested in going to school in BVSD next year, to meet all of our schools in one place on one night. I want to thank everybody who had the opportunity to come out. And for those who didn't make it, we've got an awesome video that we're going to show you so you can see what it felt like.
Right here on the table? Yeah, just throw it all here. So I'm setting up, getting ready, and hoping that there's lots of families that come by.
So the setup process is you get here and you just try to one-up the person next to you.
This is us trying to figure out how to put together our stuff.
Today we're going to showcase the mannequins that we use for our hairstyling program.
We do have the red carpet rolled out and we got the lights on so you know where to show up to.
She's at the good side now.
We're doing BVSD's a Place to Be and just trying to recruit the next great humans here at Boulder High School and Boulder Valley School District.
The showcase is like a college fair, but for schools.
This is the place to be. The showcase is where it's at.
Yes, I think it's a great opportunity.
We showcase all of the great things that our school district does from the elementary level all the way up to the high school level and our school district as a whole.
Whether it's academics, sports, clubs.
There's so much community at Fairview. There are tons of people who are here to directly help you, directly answer your questions.
When you think trade school, that's what I think of these ones.
Did you guys get our little brochure?
I think I took a pamphlet out one of these. It sat on my desk for like 3 years and I was like, oh, I want to go to tech.
That's a good one. The biggest question is finding the right school. Is this school what is right for my student?
I see you have soccer earrings. Do you play soccer?
I think it's quite empowering. Hi, I'm asking about the sports programs, if the tennis teams are good. And she's actually dove in and going to all the booths and talking to people.
What are the students like at the school?
Yeah, it's been really great. It's been really informative.
Thank you. Thank you.
This is like a POL, and we do 2 POLs each year, and it's a presentation of learning.
Parents know their kids better than anyone, and so
They should be asking, what her class size is like.
Why should I come to your school?
What are we doing that's different than other school districts?
what clubs, what sports they're interested in.
Home high school questions are really good questions.
What are my child's strengths?
If you offer advanced classes or any unique electives.
What do you do for safety?
What are the ways that you're going to support my student in reaching their goals?
This is the place where you come to get your questions answered.
Thank you.
Of course, it's one of the coolest things about open enrollment. Boulder Valley School District is all about community and connection.
Boulder Valley School District is full of opportunity. It's full of different ways towards success.
Boulder Valley School District is definitely the place to be.
At the end of the day, the students are the ones that are the winners. Boulder Valley is right for every student because we have something for everyone.
Thanks for coming to talk to us. Thank you.
Want to congratulate our communications team for doing such a good job with putting together that event. And I want to thank Laura Schaefer, who is on our cabinet team, is the architect of the BVSD is a Place to Be showcase. And everybody on our team and from all of our schools, from our cabinet to our board. When people ask me what is this like, I describe it as like a pep rally for our school district, where everybody's there, everybody's celebrating. You can feel, and we've been doing this for 3 years, you can feel how the culture in our district has shifted, right? Where we are working to make sure that everybody knows what we can do for them, that we're out and reaching out to our community and beyond on why we're a good fit what we can do and how we can help support all kids. And I think that it's gone from a culture of, if you knew some folks, you knew where to go and you knew what school you think you might want to go, and it was really stressful and really chaotic, to a moment that's exciting for our staff and for our community and for our kids. We didn't pay into those kids to say those things. Right? When you think about how they're talking about opportunity, and you think about what's in our strategic plan about developing and creating opportunity, it was really, really great. So we are now in the second phase. So we've had the showcase. The second phase, which has always been known as open enrollment, but we've been calling it now choice enrollment to better align with the state terminology. Do I have that right, Randy? Communications team sent a great message out to our community yesterday, kind of summarizing the event, asking people to give us feedback. We would love feedback on how we can do a better job. What are we missing? How can we be more accessible? What questions went unanswered? How could we figure that out? In that communication was a link so parents, community members, everyone, kids can see the dates for our open houses and tours at all of our schools. And that's where students and parents visit buildings to see which one is the right fit for them before they submit their application, which it opens up November 1st, so just in a week. So huge success. I anticipate, again, lots of interest. As a reminder to the board and the community, Bright Futures Ahead preference is an enrollment preference that we have. If you work, kids, if your parents work within our community, you get a preference to come to the best schools in Colorado, which is right here in BVSD. So encourage, if you own a business, if you go to our schools and you know somebody who might be a great fit, reach out. We do have room for a limited time only, right? Come on to BVSD. It's the place to be. We'd be excited to have you. Thanks, everybody, for that. Okay, so a couple weeks ago, the Colorado chapter of the National Association for Multicultural Education held its annual conference at the BVSD Ed Center right here. Multilingual educators from across the state joined to talk about student belonging, educational excellence, and equity. Keynote speakers spoke on building connection, cultivating constructive dialogue, and true belonging. So I want to thank the National Association for Multicultural Education for choosing us to host their conference. And finally tonight, I am pleased to share that recently 83 educators across BVSD have been awarded grants from Impact on Education, our school district's excellent nonprofit foundation. They've awarded over a total of $115,000 to our teachers just this fall in their grant cycle, and they're planning for another grant cycle in the spring. These Student Opportunity Fund grants help open up opportunities that our students might not get otherwise. Opportunities to support their academic development, their well-being, and their career trajectory. It's one of many ways that our foundation invests in our district. Impact, Allison, we want to thank you for your support. Allison, we're going to make you stand so we can all properly thank you. And anybody else from the Impact team that might be here? They're here in spirit, I know. But I'd also want to take this opportunity to acknowledge our community's support. So this grant funding was made possible by community donors, including somebody who's new in town but not really new, Meritrust Credit Union. Formerly known as Premier Members Credit Union, this organization has its root right here in our district for many years. Premier Members Credit Union was actually started by BVSD employees in 1959. And showing their ongoing commitment to those roots, Meritrust, who was previously Premier Members Credit Union but is now Meritrust, recently made a $100,000 gift to Impact on Education to support these grants. Matt, if you could stand to introduce yourself, say hello. We're excited to have you in town. You know, those six-figure checks make us super excited to have you in town. And really just want to acknowledge you for this significant investment, and this you're making a difference for our kids, for our families, for our educators. Thank you so much. I want to thank you, Allison, and Impact. Thank you, Matt, Meritrust, and I want to thank our entire community for showing up for educators and our students. It's really making a difference, and it's helping us be the best school district in Colorado. So thank you all. Another round of applause. And that is all I have for my remarks this evening.
Board members, any comments or questions for Dr. Anderson? just want to say thank you for clarifying the shift from open enrollment to choice enrollment. I did get some questions on that. And then I also wanted to elevate that while choice enrollment opens on November 1st, it is not first come, first serve. So take the time, do the school tours. You don't have to apply right away. You just have to apply by the time in which choice enrollment closes to participate in that lottery.
You know, some districts they have the window open for a couple of weeks, not BVSD. Right? We want folks to be able to make sure you find the school that is the right fit for your kid and for your family. And so we are really going the extra mile with the showcase, with our communications, with our school events. I think that, you know, parents who have questions, even if you don't know, these are great opportunities to learn more about not just about the schools, but, you know, get to know what your student needs. You know, oftentimes, maybe sometimes as parents, we just assume we know. You know, this is a great time for parents and kids to talk about what are you looking for in a middle school and a high school, you know, and how would you know if you found it? And I think that those are really great opportunities for our families as well.
Moving right along, the next item on tonight's agenda is public participation. The board respects the right of the public to speak on matters concerning the operation of the schools. The board does not endorse the comments of any speaker and reminds all those who speak that you are responsible for your own speech. Speakers will each have 2 minutes to speak. You will see a yellow card when you have 30 seconds remaining and an orange card when you have 10 seconds remaining. If you run out of time and would like to share additional information, you may always email the Board of Education. Our first speaker this evening is Daniel Bernard. Push the button with a person on it.
There we go. Hi, everyone. My name is Daniel Bernard. I am a senior at Fairview High School, and I'm here to talk to you all about a thing that I've been working on with a couple other people across high schools as well as Tiff Boyd. It's called the Resilient Futures Bond Campaign. It's starting as a small group of people, and really our goal is to expand the use of decarbonization and renewable energies across schools in BVSD. This is a really pressing issue for me and a lot of other students at the schools in BVSD, and I am sure that it is a really pressing issue for all of you as well because of the efforts that you've made in the past to lead this effort in decarbonization and renewable energy for schools. Our goal primarily is to get funding for decarb and renewables placed on an upcoming bond measure in order to make this change. We know that we're currently in the 2022 bond right now until 2027, and that work is still currently being conducted, but it's our goal to influence the research that goes into developing what goes into a new bond, and we want climate action to be placed on that. So we appreciate all of the work that you have done, and we look forward really to working with BVSD to get this done, because this is something that really matters to all of us, as I am sure it matters to you as well. That is all I have to say. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Our next speaker this evening is Lisa Larson.
Hello, my name's Lisa Larson, and I'm a paraeducator and the president of Boulder Valley Paraeducator Association. I'm here tonight to ask you to reject the proposed changes to policy HG and HC. In groups composed of hourly paid workers, I consider requiring 51% membership rate an unfair practice. Some paras can't afford to pay dues, but they benefit from having fellow paras in leadership roles in the union. BVPA advocates for all paras, not just members. The threat of the administration having the power to dissolve a union is troubling. The district should continue to stay neutral. In regards to HC, for the past few years, BVPA has negotiated for important procedural improvements. Our negotiations have been respectful and effective. We have worked together as one organization, not two opposing sides. We've brought different interests to the bargaining table and work collectively to find creative solutions for all of them. This would not have been possible if our negotiations had been limited to only joint interests. There's an African proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Please don't approve HG and HC. Let's continue to move forward together. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker this evening is Jen Bones.
Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Anderson, thank you for the opportunity to speak and be heard. My name is Jen Bones. I'm a Louisville resident, proud parent of a BVSD graduate, a paraeducator in my 9th year at Mapleton Early Childhood Center, and vice president of the Boulder Valley Paraeducators Association. Having been in education for over 20 years, I count myself as blessed. Blessed by the different cultures, backgrounds, experiences, and voices that have helped shape me into the person I am today. As a member of the BVPA Executive Board, I work to lift up the voices of our members. However, I am also pro-worker, meaning my voice is a reflection of the needs of the workers around me. I am here tonight because the proposed changes to policies HG and HC would directly impact these voices from being heard. The 51% membership requirement in policy HG, if imposed during this concerning financial climate, would be gutting. I have coworkers who cannot afford union dues because they already write the district a check at the end of some months just to pay for their family's health insurance. Their whole paycheck goes toward their insurance, and then some. I want their voices to be heard, even if they cannot afford to be union members. Possible changes to policy HC are also concerning. These changes would limit bargaining to salaries and only issues the district considers to be of joint interest. As a member of past bargaining teams, I have been proud of the strengthening of our contract and the building of consensus. This has been accomplished because of open communication and collaboration, a partnership, not a restriction. I feel that together is better. All voices are important voices. Please reconsider these possible changes. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mary Henry.
Sorry. Good evening, board members. I am Mary Henry. I'm a parent and proud BVSD paraeducator. I have been active in Boulder Valley Paraeducation Association since I began working in the district 18 years ago. And I am proud of the hard work that BVPA has done and continues to do in collaboration with BVSD to create a powerful contract that provides safe working conditions, fair wages, and other resources that our students deserve. I'm here tonight because the proposed changes to policy HG and HC would directly affect the people who support our students and teachers every day in the classroom and strip away the hard work done in collaboration with the district to create a robust contract for paraeducators. The proposed 51% membership requirement in policy HG would unfairly penalize paraeducators. Tying district recognition to percentage creates instability and fear that employees could lose that recognition simply because of normal staff attrition. In these uncertain times, there are many paraeducators that appreciate the union's work, but are also trying to balance supporting their families, which means if we fall below the threshold, they could lose the contract that provides for them, creating more instability. Policy HC is equally troubling. This would limit bargaining to salaries and working conditions and the district deems joint interest. In practice, the district could decide what topics the employees are even allowed to bring to the table. This shift silences voices and weakens transparency. Unions are not about politics, they are about protection and ensuring employees can advocate for themselves and have a voice at the table. Collective bargaining is a partnership between the union and the district. The current policies already support the partnership of mutual respect. Changing policies that result in Restricting the process erodes the trust that benefits our district as a whole. I respectfully urge the board to reject the proposed policies HG and AC. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Beth Stevens.
Good evening, Board. My name is Beth Stevens, and I am the president of Boulder Valley Classified Employees Association, as well as a proud bus driver for BVSD. Classified employees are the backbone of our schools. We make sure every day runs safely and smoothly. We take pride in our work and in our long history of partnership with the district. I'm here tonight because the proposed changes to policies HG, HC, and HJ would directly affect the people who support our students and teachers every day. The proposed 51% membership requirement in policy HG would unfairly penalize classified employees. Union membership is voluntary. That's both a legal and personal right. Tying district recognition to a percentage creates pressure and fear that employees could lose their union simply because of normal staff turnover or retirements. We've built trust with district leadership through open communication and good faith problem solving. This proposal would undo that progress. The changes to policy HC are just as concerning. They would limit bargaining to salaries and only those working conditions the district decides are of joint interest. In practice, that means the district could choose what topics employees are even allowed to discuss. That silences staff voices and weakens transparency. And under the proposed policy HJ, unions would have to submit all of their negotiation proposals in writing before talks even begin. If fairness is the goal, both sides, the union and the district, should be required to share their proposals at the same time. Collective bargaining is about partnership, finding fair and practical solutions together. The current policies already support that partnership by promoting fairness, stability, and mutual respect. Restricting that process would erode the trust and teamwork that benefits students, employees, and the district as a whole. I respectfully urge the board to reject the proposed changes to policies HG, HC, and HJ and preserve the balanced cooperative relationship that keeps BVSD strong. Thank you for your time and commitment to BVSD employees.
Thank you. Our final speaker this evening is David Stewart, who is granted 2 minutes from Katie. David.
Good evening. Before I address my stated remarks, I just wanted to recognize the credit union that used to be Boulder Valley Credit Union, then Premier Members. Made a big difference to me when I was a young teacher because they had this thing called overdraft protection that I needed to get through because I was living paycheck to paycheck, and that was a huge lift, and it's just a reminder of the small things that if we have in place can make people's lives so much better. But tonight I'm here following my co-presidents and fellow union officers to address the policy provision changes to policy H. First, I want to thank the board and the district and Dr. Anderson for moving the proposed changes from action to study. That decision shows real thoughtfulness and willingness to take the time for honest dialogue. We appreciate that you're giving space for conversation with local unions as we move forward. That said, we are concerned with some of the policies under consideration. Tonight, we're sharing what we can fit into just a few minutes, knowing this isn't the full scope of our reasoning. The proposed changes to policy HG, allowing union recognition to be withdrawn if membership drops below 51% after 3 years, undermines fairness and stability. It might seem like accountability, but in practice, it punishes employees for individual choices and risks pulling the district into internal union matters. The district's role should stay neutral, respecting employees' right to decide who represents them with added pressures, respecting employees' right to decide who represents them without added pressures and consequences. The proposed changes to Policy HC, limiting negotiations mainly to salaries in areas of joint interest, would also narrow the space for employees to raise concern about working conditions. True collaboration depends on all voices being heard. These revisions could inhibit or even prohibit the dialogue and weaken trust. We, like manner, have reservations about proposed changes to Policy HD. The added language is likely unnecessary because the board already holds these rights under existing laws. More concerning, the clause stating, except as specially limited by the express term of agreement that is permissible in the school district's policy framework, could allow future boards to challenge parts of a negotiated agreement as not permissible and therefore unenforceable. Now, it's easy to assume that under the current leadership, these risks might never materialize. But we cannot predict who will hold these positions in 10 or even 5 years. As the current national climate reminds us, policies must be written to protect fairness, certainty, and balance under all circumstances, not just when things are going well. So again, we thank you for pulling these policies back for study, and we look forward to the next phase, which includes real, meaningful conversations with the local unions before any further action is taken. Thank you for your time, and most especially, thank you for your service.
Thank you. This concludes public participation for today. On the behalf of the board, I'd like to thank everyone who took the time to share their thoughts and experiences with us this evening. The next item on tonight's agenda is board communication. Board members who would like to begin. Kitty?
First, I want to thank everyone who came to speak, especially our student speaker. I'm always impressed when we have students come and speak to us because it can be very intimidating for a student to speak to a board of adults, and especially in a formal meeting like this. And thanks to all the union representatives who spoke to us as well. The only other thing I wanted to mention is I have noticed around where I live in Superior, a lot of kids riding e-bikes on sidewalks. And I know we have information that we've given parents about e-bikes, but it's not legal to ride an e-bike on a... My time up? I'm taking all the time I want. No. I just want to encourage parents to really go over the laws with their students and go over safety rules. I saw a kid just zoom out into the street the other day, a bike that didn't require being pedaled, no helmet. And I'm just concerned for our students. So please be careful with these e-bikes.
Jorge?
I want to thank all the speakers tonight. The showcase was an opportunity to really see the best characteristics of our schools. Thank you to the teachers and the staff and the students that participated. I mean, that was so much fun for me, just seeing the energy they brought and the work how much the students cared about what they were doing there. And it's something that, we know is going on, but maybe sometimes we don't always see it. And so I had a chance to talk to so many people at so many different schools, and they're so proud of the work they're doing, and they're working so hard. And for me, it was a real sense of community. I really felt the difference there, and it's something that I feel we miss sometimes today. And that really reflects so well on Boulder Valley School District and all the work that you're all doing as a part of that. I talked to students and parents from outside the district and from within the district. And it was great to see our students representing our schools so well. I couldn't have been prouder. So I want to thank you all for the work that's going on. That's all. Thank you.
Well said on the showcase, Jorge. The only thing I wanted to mention, I alluded to it earlier, Jorge and I were invited to represent the board at Meadowlark School as they are trying to obtain RAMP status, which is the recognized ASCA model for school counselors. So American School Counselors Association has national standards and framework, and the Meadowlark School has been working hard to attain that. Part of their ability to receive that recognition is to have support from the board. So we did that last Friday. We might be invited to join them again, but shout out to Meadowlark for all the hard work you're doing in that avenue. We will now move on to information items. This evening, we have 3 information items, board members, the first of which is the Community Bond Oversight Committee update, for which Rob Price will do the introductions.
Good evening, President Rajpal, members of the board. It has been nearly 2.5 years since voters generously approved funding for our 2022 Building for Student Success program. If you have been paying attention, a tremendous amount of work that has been completed in those 2.5 years. Chris Stoppenhagen, our Executive Director of Bond Planning, and our entire bond team have continued just to do a fantastic job year after year implementing that work. Tonight, joining me is Catherine Barnes, who is our Community Bond Oversight Co-Chair, and Chris Stoppenhagen. And with that, Chris will kick us off with our quarterly update.
Good evening, board members, and good evening, BVSD community members. It was another incredibly productive, sorry, let me advance this, there we go. Another incredibly productive summer for the bond program with $74.5 million over 22 of our sites and improvements being completed. This was our third and largest summer construction season so far. As you can imagine, delivering that level of work in such a short window comes with its challenges and hurdles. So I want to take a moment just to thank each of our school administrative teams, our facilities, IT, security, community schools, and business services teams, as each played an essential role in helping us navigate those challenges and ensure that every one of our schools opened on time and students were welcome for the first day of school. And most importantly, I want to thank our BVSD board, Dr. Anderson, and our voters who approved this. It's your dedication and your commitment that makes this work possible. And we're really proud of the work that we're accomplishing here. And so I want to share this highlight reel of work that we put together for what we've completed over the past few summers so far. Thanks to our communications team for putting that footage together. It's really great to see all that, those exciting improvements in that reel. Our next slide here, we take a look at our updated timeline within the bond and what's happened really since January. So we're wrapping up our summer construction, our elementary, middle, and PK-8 sites, while Phase 2 high school projects will continue into next summer. Our Phase 3 construction documents were delivered in September. We're now bidding those projects, and we'll be bringing amendment documents for the November board meeting for your review. Looking ahead, RFPs are nearly complete with being evaluated for Phase 4, and teams begin work in January, setting us up for construction in summer 2027. This is just a reminder of the schools we have wrapping up, projects that are in construction, and then our future projects that are being designed right now. So transitioning really over all 4 phases at this current juncture. As you know, some of our Phase 1 projects stretched over 2 summers. So at Broomfield High this summer, we completed replacement of the stadium lighting, the press box, and bleachers. Interior work here included completing the expanded business center and flex space in the 700 wing, and then our continued mechanical upgrades were completed this summer as well. Also at Centaurus, press box was renovated on the field there. The flooring on the first floor was replaced. And then we continued with mechanical upgrades, installation there as well. And then our graphics package, which you see in the lower right photo there, was implemented. At New Vista, we had demolition of the middle school wrapped up, or baseline middle wrapped up in the summer. Work all around the site has progressed and is really at the end of completion right now, including grading, landscaping, installation of the turf field, and the parking and sidewalk construction. So the solar panel scope of work is moving forward. We have design drawings that are 90% complete. The panels have been ordered, and we anticipate installation of the solar array in February and March without any interruption or risk to the school activities. We're excited for the upcoming ribbon cutting ceremony and open house on November 13th, and hope that you're all able to join us. Here's a reminder of all the school sites from this summer. Along with these, we had our second round of universal playground projects at 6 schools. We had the Nederland Middle School, High School track and field replacement that was moved forward in the bond due to a need to replace them before the summer of 2027. The playground improvements that were needed to be addressed at Jamestown Elementary School were also completed. Apex will complete Phase 3 of 5 in December. The new entry and instructional spaces on the first floor are scheduled to open in January 26, marking a big milestone for this project. Really exciting to see how that's coming together. Boulder and Monarch High Schools are now in Summer 2 phase planning. So scheduling and coordination of construction activities are underway to ensure a smooth transition into our next construction phase. So I want to further highlight the progress at Apex here for just a minute. We began Phase 1 construction in March, and it's exciting to see how much progress has been made since then. So on this slide, you can see photos showing our architectural renderings starting to come to life, particularly on the first floor of the north wing. So these newly renovated classrooms will soon be home to biomed and criminology pathways, providing modern and flexible learning spaces for hands-on learning. It also includes design for an outdoor scenario space that's been completed where students will be able to conduct crime scene investigations and EMT scenarios. So really adding that real world dimension to their learning experiences. In August, we welcomed students into the transformed former library space on the second floor, now home to the College and Career Connections, Apex Counseling offices, and our Teacher Academy. At the same time, we opened the new spaces north and east of the cafeteria where Arapahoe Ridge High School had classrooms, administrative offices, their counseling areas, and the new Heart Space are currently thriving and well used.
So projects in Phase 2 continue to fulfill the promises of the critical needs plan. Culinary labs were updated with new equipment, countertops, and appliances at Boulder High, seen here in the upper left, and at Monarch. We expanded accessibility and play opportunities at playgrounds. This one in the middle was Escuela Bilingüe Pioneer. On the upper right is the expanded KYOT studio at Monarch High School. The Panther TV studio at Boulder High also was updated with industry standard equipment and new finishes. In this bond program, we are investing in auditorium upgrades, as you know, as well. And so at a number of our high schools, you can see this happening. And here, the new lighting at Boulder High School is highlighted in the bottom left. The business classrooms at Boulder High were reconfigured and updated with new furniture and casework, similar to upgrades that we did at Broomfield High and Monarch High. And we will be replacing turf at most of the tracks and fields at our high schools as well in this program. And you can see the new field at Netherland Middle High School here in the lower right. That turned out really great. So, like I said, we're bringing our contract amendments to you for Phase 3 at the November 18th board meeting for our Phase 3 projects, and coordination meetings for our summer schedules at each of the schools are underway. We'll meet with school stakeholders this fall to refresh on the upcoming scopes, discuss upcoming planning meetings, including our Bond 102 meetings that will be scheduled for the spring of 2026. And that's really designed to prepare our staff for what improvements will be made over the summer, and then what those logistics plans will look like for preparing them for that. So, over the past 3 months, we've been completing evaluations for our Phase 4 RFP process for both architects and general contractors. So we had strong participation, which we felt really good about, received competitive proposals from our pre-qualified teams. We anticipate those, again, coming in November and December, likely, will be those contracts for review. That'll keep us on track to kick off design at the new year. Both architects and general contractors have commented positively on really our preparation, the clear timelines, the coordinated approach that we have, and really the windows that we're hitting. So we know that there's a lot of other bonds out there right now that are active after last year's election. So what we found of our planning efforts are really paying off to help us attract these strong teams, and we're hitting windows ahead of other districts right now. And with that, I am happy to be joined here tonight by Catherine Barnes, who is our Vice Chairperson on our Community Bond Oversight Committee, to provide meeting updates. John Stanton was not able to be here tonight, so happy to have Catherine here with us.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Board and Dr. Anderson. I'm Catherine Barnes. I'm the Engineering Coordinator at Centaurus High School. Yes, Hi, I'm Catherine Barnes. I'm the Engineering Coordinator at Centaurus High School. I'm also the parent of 2 Boulder Valley School District graduates. So I'm also the co-chair of the Community Bond Oversight Committee. So tonight what we wanted to do is, since we last spoke at the last meeting, we had our last meeting on September 17th, and we reviewed the financial documents. And at that time, the expenditures through September 9th were the $158 million. Okay, we have encumbrance of $47 million. Am I still not close enough? Thank you. And so we've got the forecast remaining expenditures of $183 million. We heard different project updates and where we were, and we had an action item for Crestview Elementary School. And at Crestview Elementary School, what we did here is the committee recommended the action item for the Crestview Elementary School totaling $875,814 for roof and gutter repairs. And that was an increase due to the state of the roof at Crestview Elementary School. And so the Bond Oversight Committee voted to recommend that action item for you to approve here tonight as board members. So that's what we're looking to ask for this evening. Have any questions on that? Okay, thank you.
And those are all the updates that we actually have for you this evening. So we'll open it up for any other questions you might have about the bond program.
Board members who would like to kick off questions about the bond. So I have a question.
Please.
Last week, we had a presentation on declining enrollment. We discussed ways forward. Several of the schools listed in Phase 4 are our lowest enrolled schools. And I'm wondering, as we think of how our bond projects will work together with our thinking about declining enrollment moving forward, particularly with Phase 4, we're just doing RFPs on design proposals. Other items have yet to be purchased. I'm just wondering staff's thoughts on how those two work together or against each other.
President Rushball, great question, and this is something that we've been talking about before we even went to voters, because declining enrollment has been a topic in this district for quite some time, and that is one of the reasons that you see a number of our elementary schools at the tail end of the bond program. So although Chris and his team are proceeding with design, we are not proceeding with ordering equipment, materials, other things. Those would come to the board about 10 to 11 months from now for us to take action. So that is something that I'll be working with Dr. Anderson on and here in the next couple of months, bringing timelines to you to develop next steps as it pertains to declining enrollment.
Lania.
Just as a follow-up, so I see Phase 4 contracts coming for review in November and December. Are we talking about November and December of this year?
So you'll have contracts coming in for this coming summer's work in November. That's on November 18th. But the majority of our projects, those elementaries that we've been talking about, will be summer of '27. So those contracts would come to you sometime in October, November of '26.
Thank you for that clarification.
So you will see, so for Phase 3, those will be our general contractor amendments for the construction work. Then you would see our design contracts for the RFPs we're reviewing now, and then a pre-construction phase from our contractors. So that's kind of their contract or agreement just to help us estimate those projects to see where they would come in.
Do you have a rough ballpark of how much money is earmarked for Phase 4?
I can get that to you. Yeah, we do have it mapped out. I don't have it just calculated right now off the top of my head, but I can definitely get that back to you.
Board members, any other questions or comments? Thank you for this update, and thank you for so much fiscal responsibility. Managing our bond, overseeing the work, keeping us on budget and on time is a huge lift, and we're grateful.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Our next information item this evening, board members, is an update to our preschool program. I will turn it over to Nativity Miller to do introductions.
All right. Good evening, President Rajpal, members of the board, Dr. Anderson. This evening, we'll provide you with a preschool update for the 2025-26 school year. And just wanted to quickly share, while today we'll be updating you on preschool, I wanted to inform you that our ECE team is also responsible for preschool enrichment, our preschool community liaisons, as well as our kindergarten instructional support and professional learning. Today, you will be hearing from Executive Director Dr. Emma Herzog, Executive Director of Academics, and as well as our ECE Director, Teresa Clemens. And so with that, I'll pass it on to Dr. Herzog.
One moment, Dr. Herzog, before you get started. Board members, This is a preschool update, but as a reminder in our prioritization, it was kindergarten readiness. So we've wrapped kindergarten readiness into more overarching preschool updates, just to give you context as to why it's coming this way. Sorry about that.
All good? Good evening. Tonight, we will share some preschool enrollment updates for this year, review high-level data on the growth that our 4-year-old students make in preschool using TS Gold, review some initial data on Alicia Sanchez's 30-hour-a-week full-day model, and then talk through some additional questions we have about the effectiveness of our preschool and related longitudinal data we're exploring. At the end, we'll close with some ongoing next steps we have for the rest of this year and beyond. So to start, we'd like to share some updates on our enrollment this year. Our preschool enrollment is up from where it was this time last year. As of October 1st of this year, we had 832 students enrolled. On October 1st of last year, we had 770 students enrolled. Last year at this time, we had 325 students with an IEP enrolled, and this year that number is down slightly to 293 students with an IEP enrolled. It's worth noting that at the majority of our preschool sites, our general ed seats are either completely filled or have only 1 to 2 remaining openings. Our preschool community liaisons are essential to our enrollment process. Community liaisons are actively recruiting year-round and continue to make connections within the community to ensure all families are aware of our program and how to enroll. This is our second year of having a 5-day-a-week program, and our program's strong and positive reputation is continuing to spread. In addition to our overall enrollment numbers, we also wanted to share a potential emerging trend we're noticing with out-of-district enrollment in preschool. Prior to universal preschool, we did not take out-of-district preschoolers. Now that we're accepting out-of-district preschoolers, we're noticing that the number of those students continues to grow. As you can see on this slide, over the past 2 years, our out-of-district preschool students have grown from 49 to 93. This is an emerging trend we're keeping an eye on, and we're monitoring the potential impact this may have on kindergarten and beyond. It's important to mention that the current status of the Colorado Child Care Assistant Program, or CCAP, impacts our enrollment. CCAP provides funding for early learning and care for families who qualify based on income. Funding for CCAP is currently frozen statewide. This means that the majority of families who qualify for CCAP are not able to access those funds, which creates a barrier for families who have 3-year-olds and families who need full-day care. In order to help address this barrier for our BVSD families, Impact on Education secured funding for 70 tuition waivers for students. These waivers have made it possible for 3-year-olds to access preschool and 4-year-olds to access a full day. Without the support of Impact on Education, we would not be able to serve as many families, and they're truly making an impact. Teresa Clements, our Director of Early Childhood, will take you through the next portion of our presentation.
Good evening. On this slide, you can see a visual of our current programming, and this is the second year with our model. Each preschool classroom is taught by an early childhood special educator, and there is a 3-hour preschool class in the morning, 5 days a week, and a 3-hour preschool class in the afternoon, 5 days a week. In preschool, there are no Wednesday late starts. Students attend for the same 3 hours, 5 days a week, in order to meet that 15-hour requirement from the state. At 14 of our sites, we also have an option for enrichment, which allows for an extended day for our preschoolers. This slide shows one example of how preschool enrichment supplements preschool to create a full day, bell to bell, 5 days a week schedule for these families. In this example, the student is enrolled in morning preschool 5 days a week, and then after those 3 hours, the student moves to the enrichment classroom where they spend the remaining 4 hours a day. Some students would have a schedule with enrichment opposite this, with enrichment in the morning and preschool in the afternoon. Before we look at some data, I want to give an overview of the GOLD assessment that we use in preschool and kindergarten. The GOLD assessment was launched by Teaching Strategies in 2010. It is a birth through 3rd grade assessment, and it's used by 90% of Head Start programs and 63% of the largest school districts nationwide. GOLD is one of CDE's approved assessment systems for state reporting for preschoolers who have an IEP, and GOLD is also one of CDE's approved kindergarten school readiness assessments that is completed for all kindergartners within the first 60 days of school. The GOLD assessment system has 6 domains, which you can see across the bottom of the slide there. In addition to these 6 domains, we also look at science, arts, and social studies. The social emotional domain looks at skills such as naming feelings and working together in groups. The physical domain looks at gross motor skills such as balancing and kicking a ball, and fine motor skills such as using writing and drawing tools. The language domain looks at things like vocabulary and engaging in conversations. The cognitive domain looks at tasks such as solving problems and persistence. Literacy looks at items such as alphabet and book knowledge, and then math, of course, numbers and counting. Preschool teachers complete GOLD 3 times a year. Using the TS GOLD checkpoint data, we can look at how our preschool students progress throughout the year. This data set is for our 4-year-olds in preschool at the beginning of year and end of year in the 24-25 school year. It includes only students who participated in all 3 checkpoints and shows what percentage of our 4-year-old preschool students are within widely held expectations for their age. You can see that across the TS GOLD domains, our 4-year-old preschoolers made significant progress from fall to spring. For instance, in the fall, only 54% of the 4-year-olds were within widely held expectations for social emotional, and by the end of the year, that grew to 86%. In this table, you can see the progress our preschool students make in our programming across all 6 domains, and we also know and understand that this is limited data. Now we're going to look at our full-day model at Alicia Sanchez and share some early quantitative and qualitative data in what we are seeing as a result in that model. At Alicia Sanchez, we have a full-day model that is 30 hours a week with an early childhood special educator. Students spend the full 30 hours a week with this educator and do not change classrooms midday like in the model with enrichment. This full-day model is 5 days a week, 6 hours a day. First, we're going to look at some kindergarten school readiness data at Alicia Sanchez for the 23-24 school year when we were not implementing the 30-hour-a-week preschool model, compared to 24-25 when we began the 30-hour-a-week preschool model. It is important to note that these are 2 different groups of students, and we are only comparing 1 year of each model, but we wanted to share the initial data that we have. The kindergarten school readiness benchmark is where the preschool and kindergarten expectations meet on the assessment scale. If a student meets the kindergarten readiness benchmark, it shows that they have strong foundational skills as they enter kindergarten. On this table, you will see a comparison of 4-year-old students at Alicia Sanchez meeting the GOLD kindergarten school readiness benchmark in 23-24 as compared to 24-25. There are some significant celebrations that we see from our first year of implementing this 30-hour-a-week model. For example, in the social emotional domain, we saw growth from 50% of the students meeting that benchmark to 81% of the students meeting the social emotional benchmark. With language, we saw growth from 46% readiness to 77%, and in literacy, we saw growth from 67% to 85%. Of course, we have more work to do. However, from a GOLD and kindergarten readiness perspective, there is overall a clear increase in kindergarten readiness in the social, emotional, language, and literacy areas. We know these areas are essential for student success in kindergarten and beyond. We'd also like to share with you some qualitative data that we've gathered from the families at Alicia Sanchez. Patricia Amon, our preschool enrollment and family services coordinator, and I held a family roundtable in June of 2025 to learn about the experiences of our families and how the model at Alicia Sanchez has impacted their family. Overwhelmingly, the feedback was positive. Families saw great progress in language, social skills, and behavior when their child spent the full day with the early childhood special educator. I don't know. Let's see if this one will work. The remote does not seem to want to work. The microphone works. Do you want to try? Does the other one work?
That one of them worked. It's this one.
Okay, now it's working. Thank you. All right. So families shared that their students went from not wanting to go to school to loving going to school. And families shared that the ECSEs supported them with strategies and routines at home, and that they too have learned from the teacher. The challenges that they shared were about the schedule. Our 30-hour-a-week model ends at 1:50, and having preschool end 1 hour before the rest of the school can be challenging for some families. We also spoke with families who are receiving a tuition waiver through Impact on Education for their child to attend preschool at Alicia Sanchez. Last school year, we were able to award 6 tuition waivers through Impact on Education. And this school year, we have awarded 14 tuition waivers through Impact on Education for families at Alicia Sanchez. The feedback we heard from families is that their students would not have had access to preschool without the waiver. It has increased their family's financial status and food security. Many families shared that it was the first time their children had been exposed to English, and all of the students benefited from high-quality programming. In addition to now learning English and their colors, numbers, and letters, families report that their students display self-confidence and ease when at school. We're seeing initial positives with this model, and we will continue to work with the staff at Alicia Sanchez to monitor the effectiveness of this model. I will now pass it back to Dr. Herzog.
While we're regularly reviewing our existing preschool data, we also have some bigger questions. And we've been working with our new Executive Director of Accountability and Evaluation, Dr. Jessica Alzen, and her team to plan for next steps on addressing those questions. We know that with universal preschool legislation, preschool is a significant cost investment. We want to better understand what impact our district preschool has on student outcomes. Here are the research questions that we're trying to answer. How effective is our preschool program? What impact does being in our preschool have on kindergarten readiness and beyond? And how do students who attend our preschools do in our schools compared with students who do not attend our preschool? We're working We're working with the assessment team to take stock of current and past data to figure out what sorts of analyses are possible to help us answer those research questions. As we take stock, some of our considerations include, first, we've changed our preschool programming 3 times in the last 4 years, with the change to universal preschool and then finalizing our BVSD programming model to meet the 15 and 30 hours. From a data collection perspective, the student experience across those years has not been consistent. Second, we'll need to control for both student profiles and time spent in our preschool. We'll need to determine comparison groups to make sure our demographic comparisons are consistent. For example, comparing a low-income student who attends our preschool with one who didn't, and comparing a student with an IEP who attended our preschool with one who didn't, etc. We'll also need to control for time spent in our preschool. Students can spend anywhere from a month or 2 up to almost 3 full years in our preschool program. Third, we also need to review the data we have available on what students who did not attend our preschool were doing for their preschool years. Currently, families who join us in kindergarten may choose to self-report where their student was prior to kindergarten, but it's optional. And last, the assessment team is also currently reviewing our historical preschool enrollment data for accuracy as state departments and student coding has changed over the last several years. In the words of our assessment team, all of these variables make defining the treatment group and the comparison group messy. So given that, for our next steps, we will continue to collaborate with the assessment team. And we're currently in the phase of taking stock of what's possible given the current and historical data we have. And from there, we'll be designing a plan for what can be done to answer our questions. In addition to next steps with our research questions and data collection, there are also 3 key elements that continue to be ongoing and critical components for our work in preschool. First, we'll continue to leverage the preschool community liaison team for recruitment and support for families through the enrollment process. Our increased numbers are due in significant part to our preschool community liaison team, who work one-on-one with families through every part of the enrollment process and who are deeply connected with communities and families to help spread the word on our programming. Second, we'll continue to find alternative ways to offer preschool tuition waivers for our low-income families. CCAP remains frozen indefinitely, and we know that access to high-quality preschool experience for students and families who would qualify for CCAP is essential. And last, we'll continue to advocate to the Colorado Department of Early Childhood for an improved enrollment process and efficient and timely approval for families who qualify for 30 hours. Their enrollment systems continue to be clunky and difficult to navigate for both school districts and families. And Teresa has and will continue to prioritize attending all office hours, giving feedback, and asking critical questions to improve outcomes for all. When we look back on the start of Universal Preschool 2 years ago to now, we're proud of how far we've come and the positive traction we're making within this new legislation. We also know, as always, that there's plenty more work to be done. And with that, Teresa, Nativity, and I are happy to take any questions.
Thank you for that presentation. Looks like Eleni will be kicking us off with questions.
Thanks for the presentation. And with CCAP frozen, I want to give a shout out to Allison because she's here. 70 waivers for preschoolers, that's a big deal, so thank you. And to our team here, do we have any idea how many kids are out there that we're not capturing? Not just what they're doing, but how many kids are not coming into our preschools?
I don't have that exact number. I know that one of the things in Boulder County is that we have more preschool slots for 3, 4, and 5-year-olds than we have 3, 4, and 5-year-olds in the county. And the type of early care that's needed really is infant toddler. But as far as how many we're not reaching or aren't in any program, I'm not sure what that number is.
I will add, and Teresa can jump in when I probably get some of this wrong, that my understanding is with Colorado Preschool Program previously, maybe not for the low income indicator, but there was more flexibility with how to provide access to 3-year-olds who might have had some sort of indicator or eligibility than what we have through Universal Preschool. So historically, we were able to capture a wider array of 3-year-olds through state funding than what we're able to now with Universal Preschool. And I don't know if you want to add or edit any of that.
Dr. Anderson.
Totally unscientific. We have around 2,000 kindergartners. I'm looking at somebody to, and we had about 930 kids in preschool. So almost, a little less than 50%, 40-ish percent. Again, I mean, to the extent that some of those folks move here in kindergarten, some of those folks don't live here. So, gives you a sense. And I don't know that we have the capacity or ability to serve 100%, but we are continuing to grow.
Other questions? Jason?
Thanks. My chair's been falling on me, so I hope it doesn't do that while I'm asking a question. But just, on the slide on out-of-district enrollment, it said 49 in 23, 24, 75, 93. Do we have any sense of how many of those kids have stayed in the district and through kindergarten, into kindergarten?
This was
Sorry, it's
slide
number
4.
4.
So I'm going for it.
I don't know if I know the percentage.
We were just, when we were preparing for this presentation, Teresa pulled up one of our VisLab reports, and we were like, look at this. And then we noticed that kindergarten and first grade, some of the numbers district-wide are potentially higher than second grade on. So I think at this time we have more questions than we have answers, but one of the things that we're starting to work on with the assessment team as part of those questions that we laid out is like, hey, can we track some of these kids over time? And then it potentially opens some possibilities to think about that will all have ripple effects and things to think about of like, maybe a potential future recruitment strategy. I mean, this is off the cuff, right? Which is a great thing to do when you're at a board meeting. But is just saying something like, hey, if you come to us for preschool, we'll prioritize you in some way for lottery for kindergarten or something to incentivize kids. So I do think it's something to watch, and it's something that we'll be working with the assessment team on going forward.
I would say that to the extent that we can continue to tout the quality of our program, as folks are making choices both inside and outside of the district, I think is important as well. But again, as a retention tool and a preparation tool, again, I love the questions that you're asking, and this is tough to triangulate all this data to kind of really be able to confidently answer questions and not speculate. So, but most of the preschool programs do not have certified teachers that are certified in both early childhood and special education, like we do in BVSD. And so that is for sure a measure of quality in terms of the certification qualification of our educators. But I do think that that's a really important thing to know and understand. If you're with us in preschool, do you stay with us? So.
Yeah, thanks. And I would just, that's 50 kids in 2 years. And so just given our larger conversations on enrollment, I think it's something important we should track and focus on if we can. And then I just add, I appreciate this, but as one of, 893 kids, my daughter is at preschool at Creekside and just having an incredible experience, really incredibly experienced and energetic teachers. And there's really no better way to prepare her for kindergarten than being in school, having going to the cafeteria like the big kids and seeing her older brother, of course, but like just so many things, comparing to our previous experience with private preschool, it's just really an incredibly positive experience and something I hope we can share more with people in the community, both to attract, obviously, more kids and just get more kids prepared for kindergarten. So thanks.
Thank you. Kitty?
So how is the enrollment process compared to the first year?
I would say it's not any better. The state continues to try to make adjustments, but it's still really difficult, and parents don't understand they need to go through the state system to then get matched with a program, and they also need to apply or enroll in our Infinite Campus system. And so it's still really problematic, and it's a slow process. Prior to UPK, a family could come to us, we could get them enrolled that same day, and we could work with them. And we also had flexibility of seats. One thing that I'm concerned about is they're starting to put more pressure, and we're not allowed to change our seats more than 20%. And as we're trying to meet the needs of the community, and how many 3-year-olds, and how many 4-year-olds, and how many half-day, full day, it's almost impossible to predict that today, which we have to predict today, for August of '26. So it continues to be an issue that we continue to advocate and welcome other advocacy.
I think one thing that I've observed, Teresa and team, is like just our ability to get more nimble and proactive relative to all those barriers. And we talked a little about our preschool community liaison team, but truly the work that's done to go hand in hand with families throughout the whole process, it's clunky, we're giving feedback, but I think as a district team, because we know the clunks a little better, even though they're shifting, we are maybe addressing them like more fluidly than we were 2 years ago.
Jorge?
Thank you. It's great seeing the progress over the last bunch of years, despite the challenges and barriers. I appreciate you kind of trying to figure out what's working and where, and being really thoughtful about how you control for different things. I have a question a little bit to think about, the enrichment versus preschool distinction. If you could talk a little bit about that. I know there's 14 schools, and I'm curious about what the differences look like, if you can tease out the data to see if there's differences in terms of outcomes, and what the distribution looks like compared to other schools.
So to clarify, all students come and have 3 hours with a licensed early childhood special ed teacher. And where we have enrichment, then they spend the other half of a day with a classroom lead who does not need to be a licensed teacher, but who does need to have education to, basically it would be the same education and experience that you would need to be a director at a private child care center. And so the enrichment team works closely with the preschool team to basically do that, enrich what the students are doing in that opposite session. So we know just students being able to spend a full day in our program is beneficial to them. As far as getting to that place of comparing those that are in both preschool and enrichment versus just enrichment, we haven't got to that place yet of being able to look at that data. This is just the second year that enrichment has been under our department, and previous to that, it was under community schools and a different type of program.
I think every time Teresa talks, it gives me an idea of something that I want to say when I think I didn't have anything. What we do know, and I know we've talked about this in the past too, is just at our sites that have enrichment, we tend to see higher enrollment because it is a need for families. And so part of the weedy game that Teresa is very good at playing is like, how many families do we need to break even on cost to make sure we're staffed appropriately? Where do we have the space? Because in some of our schools we have the demand, but we don't necessarily have the space. So it is, it's wonderful to have bell-to-bell high-quality preschool programming, and we're also just continuously trying to think about how do we maximize where there's the most need in the community with the spaces that we have. And then the point is well heard as we continue really distinguishing our sites that have enrichment versus not, and disaggregating data in that way to see if we can find any trends.
Thank you. That's really helpful. We have 14 sites with enrichment out of how many preschools? And can you talk a little bit about where they're located and accessibility and how we're addressing that, or if there's potential for growth in those schools?
We're at 24 sites, 24 elementary and pre-K 12 sites. So all throughout the district. We have Nederland, Lafayette, Louisville, Superior, Boulder, Broomfield. I name them all. And so they're all throughout the district. I would say our enrollment, what we've seen in Boulder, has been a little bit lower, and our enrollment in the Lafayette area has been higher. So we could use some more space in the Lafayette area, but the spaces there are not quite as available as they are in Boulder. So we continually look at where is there a preschool classroom available, where is that need, and how can we move forward? Do we need to adjust classrooms and so forth? Does that answer your question?
One final question. Is there enrichment at the Sanchez site as well, or is it strictly preschool?
So the difference at Alicia Sanchez is those students spend that full day with the teacher. So there's not enrichment because they're with the preschool teacher the entire time. So that's the difference, and that's the only site where we're doing that model.
I have a question. Are there national norms for either achievement or growth in TIA school?
So we were looking at that. The last normative sample that Teaching Strategies did was from 1819. And so we felt like that to compare 24-25 to 1819, which was pre-COVID, also that normative sample was not the same type of sample and percentages as our school district, like as far as percentage of students on IEPs and things like that. So I anticipate that with universal preschool, that statewide data is going to become available. That is something that they are looking at for their accountability, and then we'll have access. When we had Colorado Preschool, there was state data for Colorado preschool programs, but again, that last data set was 22-23.
Thank you for that. I also just want to say thank you for your efforts to continue to push the state on improving the UPK system, and also put a plug that there are elections coming up and different people will be in different roles, and advocating with those folks who might be coming into those roles in 2026 and beyond is also could be worthwhile for us as we continue to navigate what has been a very challenging system. Dr. Anderson.
I asked that same question. I mean, wouldn't you think that if you were investing this much in a new program, that'd be like the first thing you'd set up? is understanding what good is? I think one of the I won't do this very long, but one of the challenges with the UPK program is there's no quality control on programming, and they don't have any way so you can even analyze the results on the mandatory assessments that you have to give. That's broken.
Thank you so much for this update and for all your efforts in preschool and kindergarten readiness.
Thank you.
Our final information item this evening is the legislative update. Dr. Anderson, did you have anything to share?
Ballots are in the mail if you already haven't had them and have returned them. I will say, to your previous point, that as a superintendent group, the Front Range superintendents are beginning to engage with candidates for governor. 26 is around the corner, and trying to understand who do we feel like will be the person that's best positioned to support public education, K-12 education, help us navigate through the challenges. What are the things we're asking them about? Student count, universal preschool, because whoever is the governor will be the new person in charge of universal preschool, right? So there's very direct control. Asking about funding and just overall approach. Asking about the federal tax credit, tax break that the governor gets to decide by 26 if Colorado participates or not. So I think there's some high stakes things for K-12 in the next governor's race that I would just hope that folks would pay attention to. And I would imagine that educational organizations will be endorsing candidates at some point to, based on positions on those items.
Thank you for that update. Board members, we've been asked for a 5-minute comfort break before we come back for action and study items. Welcome back, everyone. Calling the meeting back to order. Our next item on today's agenda is action items consent grouping. 8.1 personnel items, 8.2 approval of minutes, October 14th, 2025, 8.3 approval of minutes, October 21st, 2025, 8.4 authorization of transfer to Crestview Elementary School, 8.5 cancellation of the December 23rd, 2025 board meeting, 8.6 grant health services substance use prevention from the AG's office. Are there any items board members would like to pull from consent grouping? Hearing are none, is there a motion to approve? Moved by Kitty, seconded by Jorge. Board members, is there any discussion on consent grouping? Seeing none, Laura, can you please call the roll?
Yes.
Medler. Oops. Quinlan Oweda.
Yes.
Rajpal.
Yes.
Sargent.
Yes.
Unger.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Our next item on tonight's agenda are policy study items. We have several policies under study today to try to clean up the docket for the rest of this semester prior to the next prioritization. We're going to go through these in a couple big chunks, and I'll hand it over to Kathleen to talk about that.
Thank you, Board President Rajpal. So we do have a few sets of materials here that we can group together. Items 10.1, 10.2, and 10.3 are policies that the board addressed in August of this year. They were immediate changes that were made necessary due to changes in the law. Under the board's policy, we are then required to go through our ordinary policy adoption process where you study and then take action at the second meeting. So tonight is the first of our normal study opportunities for these. There have been no additional changes made since the board touched these in August.
Board members, any questions or comments on these three policies? Lelania and then Kitty.
Okay, Kathleen, on IGAC, I'm still confused about the, under C, the human sexuality part. I'm just still not sure how that gets back to religion in school, but anyway, as long as it's supposed to be there.
I did take a look at that again. So Board Member Quinlan Oweda is asking about languages that is on page 2. So it's section C3 of the policy had the new language in response to the Supreme Court case, Mahmoud versus Taylor, that explains how a family would go about seeking a religious opt-out. I think that reference just to if we're talking about our health education or sexual education, that isn't an opt-out under this policy. It would happen under IGAE. Would it help if I added the policy reference there?
I think I just couldn't understand what it was trying to do, so yes, it would help me if I were reading that. And my second thing on this is, does this policy apply to athletic competitions?
Yes, this, like all of the board's policies, apply to our education and to our activities. I guess I should say to most policies would apply across our school district programs and activities.
And so I don't know if anybody else is open to a friendly amendment there, but I would like athletic events and activities to be specifically called out in this policy.
Where? In somewhere part.
In the policy about not having religion in school, in this policy, we don't talk about athletics anywhere in this policy, as far as I can see. In the title, you could put it anywhere you want to put it.
Or perhaps in the neutrality section that talks about the Establishment Clause restriction. So when we're thinking about things like prayer at an athletic event, for example, if it is a student expression, then it would not have any constitutional issues. But certainly under this policy, adults could not lead prayer at an athletic or any other event. But I think that we could put a reference to make sure that it's clear that that neutrality requirement applies to programs in that section A.
I'm just wondering if anybody has yet opted out. I know the board got an email at the very beginning of the school year. And so I'd just be curious how many have opted out of various things and what we have done to accommodate them.
Well, as we sort of anticipated, candidly, because this isn't a brand-new policy for this board, and there's been language consistent with the constitutional rights of families for some time. To my knowledge, we've had one family opt out of instruction. I think that it's really important to think about what that right is. What we're talking about is if there's instruction being delivered at school, and that definition is on page 2 in section 3 that we just referenced, where it talks about instruction means an oral, written, or digital lesson, lecture, or presentation. So I believe we've had just that one.
So do we know what they've opted out of? I mean, what subject matter?
I actually think I need to correct myself, Board Member Sargent. I believe that the inquiry was about a specific ADL curriculum around No Place for Hate. I think there was an inquiry by a parent about whether there was instruction of that curriculum. The school's response was that they had a sign-up that was sort of referencing the tenets, but there was not instruction through that curriculum because we've adopted the Second Step program as our anti-bullying curriculum, and that was the instruction that was being delivered at the school. And once the parent had that information, they actually didn't persist with the request to opt out.
Thank you.
Board members, any other questions or comments on 10.1 through 10.3? We can now move along to the next section.
The next items that we will take a look at then are 2 that the board studied recently. So if you look at items 10.4 and 10.5, these are the policies that address grading and homework. Starting with 10.4, grading systems, there were an awful lot of red lines to this policy, so I did provide you with a clean one, but just for high level, the initial red language around assessment is really language that's required by law about our district assessment system. The grading system language that's just below it came from our existing policy. I did collapse policy and regulation into one document. So that existing language may have been from the regulation. Looking at page 2, when we look at the principles, items 1 and 2 are new based on the board's discussion. The remaining items 3 through 6 are in existing language. As you proceed through this document, you will see that what we're really trying to do is get the policy to be aligned and consistent with current practice, get it in a place where we really can have DAC, who has told the board and staff that they are studying this area and intend to have comments this year. So this first cut was really an effort to get everything into one place, take out unnecessary redundancies, and then align it with practice as well as the board's discussion. In the agenda, go ahead. In the agenda item, we did point out a few items that I did not attempt to redline or to correct. A few things that I think would warrant some specific discussion and then consideration as to how any updates would be rolled in. Those items are in the bullets on the board's agenda. So the use of pluses and minuses on letter grades is an issue that's been addressed in policy. We also have a separate policy on weighted grades that the board did update in the last 2 years, but a question as to whether the board would want to further reduce the number of policies and integrate that language here. There is some language about notice requirements, giving kids notice if they're in danger of failing a class, and then some language around retaking courses, where we thought that those were items that might benefit from additional board discussion.
Thank you for that overview, and having attended the last DAC meeting where they were taking a first pass at all these grading policies, I think having something cleaner is going to be of immense help for them to provide feedback on. There was a lot of confusion about what was required, what was not required, I think even amongst ourselves. Our old policy was really clunky, so I think this is a great first step. I think it helps us maintain what our existing practices, whether or not we believe they could be modified, and we can have some discussion on that, but I think that this will be helpful in all of us in our community reframing and having the conversation on grading and grading systems. So I appreciate the initial work on this. Board members who would like to kick off questions or comments on this policy? IKA 10.4. Lelania.
I would be in favor of moving the weighted grade segments or policies into this so we only have one place to look.
I think that'd be immensely helpful. I also think one thing about the pluses and minuses, I'm curious how many schools use pluses and minuses and how many schools don't, and the benefit of continuing to allow that practice if they are not, in our high schools, if they are not then included on transcripts. Historically, pluses and minuses have been used to further differentiate grades so they can help with class rank, but if that's not a practice that we're doing, our weighted grades policy also talks about what weighted grades look like, and it talks that we will not use class rank. So I'm curious if we have an understanding of how widely used that practice is. We don't know. But I would really like that to be looked at, because if consistent, what I heard at the last board meeting is a high degree of consistency at sites and across the district so everybody understands and we are consistent in what all of the grades mean from our BVSD schools. So I would like that to be evaluated, something to be considered as well. Second, on the weighted grades, folding that in. And then the degree to which, I guess, we allow schools versus departments versus the district deciding how to approach grading. If we're considered allowing standard-based grading, is the whole school have to allow standards-based grading, or can it be one teacher within a school, or how are those decisions made? Like, what are we hoping for in this policy? Dr. Anderson.
So just to be clear, this first pass is just to clean up, and then what you all are suggesting would be things that we'd hope DAC and others would weigh in on, give us feedback. You're not suggesting that Kathleen try to do this now as part of the initial cleanup?
No. But things to
Okay.
definitely.
Okay, so we're defining step 2.
Step 2.
Okay. Because I think that we have to get a good amount of feedback on some of these things. What might not seem like a big change to the system might be a massive change for individuals or folks who, again, like, we have to own the fact as a district that we've allowed these things to happen. So I just think we have to be sensitive to that.
Other questions or thoughts on this policy, board members? Can I ask a process? This two-phase approach makes a great deal of sense. We can get feedback for any changes to board policy or district school direction. Are we going to keep this in red line? How long are we going to keep this in red line before we go out and get further feedback on grading? Before we kind of take that longer second phased approach?
I mean, I think that you would approve a policy, right? Not a like you'd approve a policy, right? And this is the policy. And then we would continue the conversation based on board discussion, based on direction, based on prioritization. Like, hey, we need to kind of think about these things. And we're just going to need to really think through the system implications. What are the implications on Infinite Campus? What are the implications on certain schools? You know, the why behind some folks and some departments and some schools are doing some of the things they are. What does that happen? The whole standard-based grading. Like, do we have folks that don't give zeros? Do you have, like, there's all kinds of nuances that over time, depending on the professional development or the book that you read, like, folks have adopted different philosophies in the absence of a district, here's how you do it. So I do think that it'll take some time. So let's clean it up. Let's get this, let's get this clean so it just clarifies and cleans up, doesn't change much, right? And then we can take it and adjust it, which this will be just a new approach for us with policy, like the 1-2 kind of the first step, second step, which I think makes sense. So.
Particularly for ones that are really messy. So thank you for that. I look forward to passing this to get it out to the community for feedback. Moving on then to 10.5.
So 10.5 is in the same group with the one that we just talked about, where it is something that we know that we need some additional feedback and work on, but the current policy is really far from actual practice. This is the one policy of all that we had listed tonight that we actually got some feedback from through our website. And I think encouraging what the board already talked about, which is some flexibility in the policy itself, but that was the only input that we received on this one. This policy, I don't think even had a regulation. So no, I'm sorry, it did have a regulation. So we have collapsed into one policy. We've eliminated the 1991 reference that we had that was there. We tried to consolidate it with just clarifying the language and condensing the district expectations, and then making clear what school and program responsibilities and flexibilities could be.
Board members, any questions or comments on IKB? I think it's much improved. I think after DAC feedback, I know that they're going to approve their feedback at the first meeting in November. We can potentially whittle it down further. And if it makes sense, I think then deciding if it makes sense to continue to be a standalone policy or after we look at all the A policies, IGA, if it can be embedded, because none of this is required by state law. But I think much improved. Thanks for your work on that.
Okay, then we will turn next to our K policies. We have two. The first is public gifts to schools and the school district. This is a policy that the board addressed in November 2024 and then talked about again. So this is a first effort at a red line that would, again, consolidate the regulation. There is a theme here, just to get our numbers down. And then a number of red lines that were based on board discussion and efforts to just clean it up and make it a little bit easier to understand.
Board members, questions or comments on this updated KH?
I'm very happy about it.
Dr. Anderson?
I would say that there's one thing here that we probably want to have a little bit more discussion on or consideration on, and that's the types of personnel that we allow schools to fundraise for. In the past, it has been very explicit that that the dollars were allowed for more non-licensed or temporary personnel versus giving parents hiring teachers. And I think that I have some concerns around that from an equity perspective, from a I don't want some schools to be able to just buy teachers and buy services when other schools maybe can't afford to do that. And I also think that it gets tricky, right? When parents are giving money and to pay for the teacher, that then who they respond to? They respond to the school district or the folks that are giving the money. I think that it can get just, I think I have some concerns there. I want to think about that a little bit more. I think that the rest of the cleanup, I think, makes sense. I do think we need a little bit more work on that, and I apologize for not getting that feedback in earlier. We've got a bunch of policies we're trying to get going, so I just kind of wanted to put that on the table as something I think we need to consider.
Yeah, and I think elevating that in item number 1, it is confusing that the 2 bullets, the high schools talks just about personnel, and then the elementary K-8s talks about non-licensed, regular, or temporary personnel. So just having that define personnel clearly and then apply those 10%, 30% as they have been always applied, because I think the first time we saw this policy, that was the biggest feedback about, like, leave those alone. But if we can have number 1 be what we define employee the way we want to define the type of employee, and then kind of remove the nuance from those individual bullets and keep the reallocation exactly the same, I think that would be a relatively minor change, and we could move forward with these cleanups, which make this policy so much easier to understand, which will be a huge benefit to our schools and our community. Kitty.
So, because I went through it quickly and didn't notice the difference much between the high school and the elementary. And what I remember high schools raising money for is maybe to pay a coach, a teacher who's already there to coach something, or I know the band director was paid to work over the summer, but it wasn't hiring a new person. But I think we should be fairly specific about what we mean by personnel and who can be hired at high school as well.
Piggybacking the contract language for those types of employees, that it's what's the extra duty? Does that language in the extra duty, I know there's an MOU on extra duty right now too, does that clean that up about how that extra duty comes in or not? I just want to be clear that the language is consistent across all of the documents that refer to those types of employees that Kitty just referred to.
I'd like to.
I'm sorry. And also that all personnel answer to the school district, not to anybody else.
We did add language to make clear that the evaluation and the supervision responsibilities are unchanged, regardless of the source of the funding. But I think, I'm sorry, I have a migraine, so my words are not cooperating with me right now. Yeah.
I think we need to take a look at that. Make sure we have to be in sync with our contract language, and I think that sometimes it's not a coach, but they would have they'd call it a clinician. I'm just thinking about, and this happens in music, band programs across the country, right? You bring in somebody specific to work with. The band director doesn't play the drums and you want somebody to really, teach the kids how to play the drums, you bring in a clinician, right? And I do think to a certain extent, there's specialized coaches for like track and field. You bring somebody in to, pole vaulting. If you ran sprints, you don't want them coaching pole vaulting, right? Somebody could get hurt. So to not change practice, but to clean the language up, I think would be the goal, just to make sure everything aligns. Does that make sense, Kathleen? Yeah, okay.
That does, thank you. And we'll clarify and make sure. I have had those discussions with Human Resources, but I think a little bit more conversation will help us land exactly where we want with the language.
Yeah, and just also all the work we did with the booster clubs and that kind of stuff. I mean, some of that, who's funding what? Does this apply to that, or is this like PTOs raise dollars, somebody gives a gift to the aeronautics program, we have the athletics and activities policies as well, and so being really consistent on what's talking about what would be great. Okay, moving on to KHB sponsorships. Kitty.
Oh, it's Kathleen. Oh, Kathleen's going to start. Never mind.
This one was probably freshest on your mind since we talked about it most recently. So the red lines that have been made to this policy were based on the board's discussion, and I think your most recent meeting.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I'm assuming everybody noticed that the last paragraph, the last full paragraph, doesn't really make any sense. And Kathleen and I talked about that to say, what is it supposed to say? And I'm going to help her write what we want it to say and leave out the nonsense. I read it to my daughter and she said, it needs to be put out of its misery.
That's the paragraph on documentation, board members. So we do have some ideas, and we'll bring you one that is less miserable at the next meeting.
Thank you for your work on that policy.
Okay, and the final set of policies that we have then are the board's H policies. We looked at these policies in June 2025 and had not revisited them since. So as Board President Rajpal mentioned, we're trying to make sure that we've completed action that the board has already initiated. The board did hear some public comment tonight on a couple of provisions, and those provisions are new language. Since we talked about this in June, with the 51%, that language was in the first red line. I modified it slightly in response to some feedback that we heard from the association, but the responses you heard tonight, or the public comment we received tonight, were to that updated language in the recognition section. And then you did get a couple of comments about new language, where we're trying to align the language around scope of negotiations, as well as that representation rule. And then I did write down the association's final comment, not one that I had heard previously, and something I would like to spend a little bit of time on between today and the board's next meeting.
Kitty.
Yes, after hearing the comments from our union representatives, it gave me pause a little bit, because I don't want to see anything that we do to harm the negotiations, to harm our employees and the unions, or to pull the rug out under them because of lower membership. So I don't know how, I didn't go back and read the absolute original ones, but I do have concerns about everything that they said. If what we wrote would actually do what they're concerned it would do.
Dr. Anderson?
Thank you for those comments, Kitty. I'd like to ask the board to give us a little bit of space to circle back with our associations to make sure that we honor the feedback that they gave. I appreciate them coming speaking this evening. I think that certainly our intent as a district, my intent as superintendent, is to continue with the very positive relationships we've had. Things aren't going to get easier as we deal with the other things from the federal government, from state budgets, so on and so forth. And so to have some just deeper conversations with associations, circle back and get something that's cleaner, that I think that we can live with, they can live with, and that gets us to where we need to be, is what I'd like to do.
I was curious, because I also heard the concerns about the 51%, and I'm wondering, do we know what the percentages are currently for BVPA and for the classified employees in those unions?
We were in the process of getting updated numbers this fall. I think as the some of our members mentioned today, that it changes as people retire and there's attrition and new people come in, but we'll have those for news and notes this week.
Thank you, that would be super helpful.
One thing I did notice that I'd like to suggest a change for is if you have a group that is wanting to hold an election to choose, a union or other entity to represent them in negotiations. And when I saw that it could be more than two possibilities, I mean, there's join a union or don't join a union, but what if it's two separate unions and it says whatever gets a simple majority wins? But my concern is that you could have more people voting against that than for it because there are three choices, and wondering if you could do ranked choice voting instead, so that you know that what you end up with is what more people want.
I think you would mean HG, right, which is our method of determining staff negotiating organizations. I'll have to look at that. Yeah.
In response to staff feedback about challenges to get to 51% of membership participation because dues are a hindrance, I mean, it seems unusual that somebody with a minority representation could represent a group. There's 20 people participating in a union, that they would have those decision-making powers in my brain, logically. Who sets the dues? I mean, I also don't want dues to be the reason why people cannot participate, and I'm curious about who sets the dues and what are those dues? And what control does the district versus the bargaining units have over that, if that truly is a barrier to participation in the union?
So we don't set the dues, right? It would be, but I don't know, I would have to check in with our associations to see how that's determined and figured out. And, I do think, I do appreciate David's comments around, thinking about these types of policies over the tests, will they stand the test of time, right? We've got this wonderful relationship now. We work hard to maintain that. Lots of give and take, lots of collaboration, lots of consensus building. And we also have strong union, association leadership, right? And so how do we create policies that ensure that regardless of who's leading associations, who's leading the district, who's on the board, that they get to a place where we're protecting employees, we're protecting the interests of the district. But I do think that we'd have to just have some more conversations on the why behind those things, what's the flexibility, what's the inflexibility, depending upon national affiliations, so on and so forth.
Yeah, I have one more question. So if there is a group, let's say one of the unions falls below 51% or whatever, if we revise the number. So if that were to cause them to lose union representation, then who would negotiate for that group? I have no idea.
I think the question is a group still a group if there's not enough participation?
But
right?
the group of employees would still be a group of employees. I mean, like, the teachers are still the teachers, even if BVEA didn't represent them. So
Right.
are we expecting them to coalesce on their own and come up with negotiations? Or
Well, I think as you heard, the district and the board's role is neutral when it comes to employees determining who will represent them. I mean, our policy has been silent on this issue since these policies were written in the 60s. I think I would really want to look at what that process would be if policy doesn't have a way to say if it falls below this threshold, there's no longer a represented group. Then would there be another election? How would we go about assessing whether there's still adequate representation? I think that's a question we should look into and bring you back more information.
Any further questions on those policies, board members? Process question. We have one meeting left before before elections. We have one meeting after that before we recess for the semester. Is there a potential for some of these that have not been questioned tonight during public comment and board comment to come back, and then potentially taking longer for the others? Or do we have a timeline? Do we have to approve them all at once as a chapter? Or can we approve them as we work our way through?
I think that, pretty quick to have the conversations that we need to have. Certainly, we want to be responsive. Whatever we can bring back in November, we'll bring back. We'll bring you back things that we feel really good about and that folks feel good about. And if there are things that folks don't feel good about, they just won't be able to come back until we get to a place where we get on the same page.
Thank you for all of that policy work this evening. Board members, final item on tonight's agenda, future agenda item requests. Is there anything anybody would like to add to our prioritization list for January? Kitty's going to prioritize a bunch of work she won't be here for. Seeing as there are none, I just want to remind folks to vote. We've got elections in a week, and cast those ballots. With that, our meeting for tonight is adjourned.